Of Today with Ari and James, Monday through Friday.
And away we go on a Monday. Welcome back. Happiness is a choice. Thank you for choosing us, along with James Westling, Ari Temkin. Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Counting down the weeks until football season starts. This is the final week of the month of July, and then we're in it. We're in football season month. One of the many starts to the official, unofficial starts to the football season. Being in August is definitely a start to the football season.
Very much so, because week 0 is in
August.
In the month of August.
Boom.
However, I will say, when you and I looked at the schedule late last week, in our brains, we just kind of thought like August 17th or 18th. It feels like the college football calendar is moving up every year. That isn't necessarily the case. Week 0 this year isn't until August 29th. So week 1 of the college football season is the Saturday of September 5th. That's actually a full week later than it was last year. So we've got to wait one more extra Saturday for football.
But I think next year is officially the year when week 0 becomes the starting point, and I think that'll be even earlier. So instead of it being the 29th, it would, I think, be the week before that into next season. So at least for 2027, we can know that it'll be a much shorter off season.
Yeah, that would be my hope and assumption, and I think just the fact that everybody plays that first week. We're not going to call it week 0 anymore, which was a huge relief to learn that at Big 12 Media Days. It will be week 1 of the college football season, and it will start the final weekend at the latest in August. So that'll be cool.
Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Packed a lot in. I would say the highlight for me was saw the movie Disclosure Day.
Okay.
Which is getting a lot of hype. It's the Steven Spielberg movie about aliens. I don't know if you know this. It's based on a true story. Dang it. Really thought I could catch you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I saw the preview, my first thought was, oh, this has happened before.
If you know Spielberg's work, it's usually based on facts and facts alone. But he talked with a lot of like these UFO conspiracy guys, some of the heavy hitters, if you will, and kind of based his movie around that. So it's generated a lot of buzz, but I think it gets around a 6.5 or a 7 rating on IMDb, which is a little bit below my threshold, but with all the hype, decided to check it out, and it was okay.
Did you take the kids to go see it?
Nope, just the wife and I.
Not a
little
kids,
date night.
Not a kids movie.
I think it's rated PG-13.
Okay.
But I guess, yeah, you'd have to determine how much you want your kids or be willing to share with your kids the whole thought behind aliens.
Yeah.
Because, spoiler alert, there's a lot of aliens.
Aliens are real. Spoiler alert, aliens are real. So are you going to go over or under the IMDb threshold here?
All right, so without spoiling too much, I would say the movie was fantastic. Steven Spielberg movies are always crazy long, right? It's like 2.5 hours, maybe even 2:45. I would say the first 2 hours, really good. The last like half hour or 45 minutes, it ramps the like unbelievable cheesiness to a whole nother level. So that's what I would say about that. I would say the first like 2/3 or 3/4 of the movie, 8 out of 10.
It feels,
the rest maybe a 5.
It feels like in this day and age, movies are made too long, and they get to a point, because I feel like the last few movies I've seen, it's like, yeah, this movie was good. If they'd cut it in half, I think it'd be significantly better. Is that just our threat? Is that us? Our attention spans, or was the movie just that cheesy at the back end?
No, I think it's more that Hollywood wants more, right? Everything's about the next thing. And like when we were growing up, I don't remember movies being over 2 hours. Definitely not 2.5. I remember one of the first movies that was over 2 hours, Titanic, and everybody was freaking out that it was 2 hours. Movies were like 90 minutes, full stop. And I think we also see it, you and I we've talked about this before, like with TV series that just want to keep going and keep going and keep going. The Game of Thrones had to slide in one more season, and it almost ruined the 6 or 7 seasons before it because it was so terrible.
No, almost about it, yeah. know almost about it.
I'm a huge fan of a limited series.
Yeah.
Give me 8 just rock solid banger episodes, and then it's done.
Just be limited. Just be limited. Be limited. That's how writers should now think. Well, and then you have platforms that are basically, compromising the art, I would say. Netflix is definitely someone that does this, where they're like, hey, you've got to write to the audience's lack of attention span. And so, I mean, in many ways that interferes with the art, because it's like not, if you're a writer or director, you kind of make your movie or your show based on your own instincts, your own artistic instincts. And in this case, it's like, no, but that's cool, but we've got a formula here that works. And so we'd rather you write it this way and direct it this way so that people will engage, as opposed to like other platforms where the content's more open-ended.
Yeah, like Matt Damon and Ben Affleck just launched a new company, and it has a little bit of AI mixed in. It's this big partnership with Netflix. They're going to be churning out Netflix movies, and they've released one, and I thought it was pretty good. But even they were talking about how the art of movie making has changed. There used to be this ramp up, and now if you don't grab the audience's attention in the first 2 minutes, you lose them. And so now the graph has this huge spike right at the beginning, and then this drop off, and then it kind of rebuilds to the climax. But it's totally different than back in our day.
Well, and I mean, the same is true for us. Have we grabbed the audience's attention here in the first few minutes of the show?
Talking about movies, how have we not? What was the highlight of your weekend?
Why don't you give us, a really good hot take here to really grab the audience? It's got to be super good. That's what we should prepare every day.
Yeah.
Just some sort of a hot take to start the show.
My hot take would be,
warm the pancakes up.
what's your stance on coaching your kids from the sideline? Because you've actually been a coach. You have a very important offensive coordinator position in flag football. So what's your stance on, we don't need 10 to 20 coaches for every game that we attend for a 10-year-old youth basketball game. And that's what we took in yesterday.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Okay, so you're talking about actual coaches.
Actual coaches on the bench. No, those guys are okay.
Right.
I'm talking about the 10 to 20 gathering of parents that are watching the game, usually 20 or more, that are all coaching at the same time.
Right. So what are we talking about? We talk about encouragement, or lay this out for me in terms of coaching from the sideline.
No, we're talking wheels off. I'm not even sure they're coaching their own kid. Just yelling and screaming, things that don't even make sense. Let's put the fun in fundamentals. If you're going to coach your kid from the sideline, at least give them some good coaching tips.
Yeah.
Not just rebound.
No, I mean, I don't think this is a hot take at all. I think
Run!
This is a very reasonable take. It's a good observation on your part from the standpoint of far too many people think they're sports experts, ourselves included here.
But we're a little self-deprecating. Okay, we're not afraid to make fun of ourselves. We're not afraid to lean into the armchair quarterback angle.
But you and I have a pretty decent background in sports, insofar as if we were to coach a kid from the sideline, there'd be a little bit more credibility in it. But yet at the same time, I'm going to let the coaches coach. After a game, I might be able at that point to provide some input to my kid. But during the game, no, just let them play.
Bro, there was a lady pacing up and down in the stands. She was standing behind the stands, but they're only 3 or 4 rows deep,
sure.
Right? I mean, yelling, screaming, nervous, anxious pacing back and forth the entire game.
What was it?
Very animated.
What are we talking? Millions of dollars at stake here?
Right? That was our thought. What's the spread? What's the line? Are you going to lose a big toe if Johnny doesn't sink this free throw? It was insane.
Is it worse than it used to be?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a dumb question because that it's obvious that it is. In what ways, though? Are parents more intense?
Yes.
See, I don't know about that.
I think it all stems from just the growth of sports collectively and what's at stake. I mean, now you have kids that prior to this eligibility ruling, which I'm so glad that happened, because we were headed down a path where 6th, 7th, 8th graders were being held back to have a competitive athletic advantage.
Oh, it's still happening.
To set themselves up
Yeah.
for more NIL, more scholarship offers, more
Yeah.
dollars on top of the scholarship.
Yeah, no, that's happening for sure.
But now, once they get to college, with the eligibility ruling, it doesn't really benefit them because there's an age to it too. Like, you could step on campus and have 5 years to play if you're under the age of, it's either 18 or 19 the day you enroll. Otherwise, it goes off your birthday. So sure, you can be held back and you can go to college at the age of 20, but then you only have 2 years to play.
Quite honestly, that may be the best unintended consequence of that ruling, of the 5 and 5. The idea that, like, all of these parents that are, like, knowingly holding their kids back to a degree that's, like, in some cases absurd. Like, you're 20 years old and graduating high school. You're 21 years old and graduating high school. So yeah, I mean, I like, as you bring that up, that is a really good point about, like, an unintended consequence of it. Like, yeah, I mean, that'll catch up to you eventually. At some point, your actual age will catch up to you in the 5 for 5 deal with college sports. We'll see if that keeps on in terms of the NCAA being able to enforce that. We'll get into more of the Protect College Sports Act and some of the latest news around that and a potential CBA on the way. A lot to get to today. We saw Brett Yormark do the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge in support of former NFL running back Chris Johnson. He then nominated other commissioners of other conferences to do the same. Thank God that Chris Johnson has brought back the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. That was gone forever, and now it's back. I'd like to see other things come back. But what'd you think? How'd you grade Brett Yormark's Ice Bucket Challenge?
10 out of 10. He crushed it. Beautiful backdrop. He's ready to go. But also,
10 out of 10?
I love
to leave a little bit of room for error. It's not being ridiculous here. He's the commissioner, but he doesn't do everything perfectly.
I love who he nominated, though. I think it shows that, yeah, these guys can go fisticuffs in a conference room when it comes to the college football playoff and all of the positioning of these different conferences. But for him to nominate the SEC and the Big Ten and the MAC gets a shout out too. The MAC sports commissioner in here as well.
It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We've got Jeff Woody, our buddy from former Iowa State running back, joining us coming up to talk a little Iowa State football. Plus, I want to dig into some really interesting stories around the conference, including Deion Sanders and high school recruiting, Kenny Dillingham, and maybe how he got even closer to Michigan than we expected. That's all coming up. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios, along with that guy, James Westling, on social at James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin on social at Ari Sports. It's great to have you with us today and every day here in your home for the Big 12. Tune in and Big 12 Studios. By the way, did you know that the Super Bowl this year is on Valentine's Day? Have you been made aware of that fact?
No, actually. Okay.
The Super Bowl for this season is on Valentine's Day.
That will be an interesting dynamic across America.
Yes, it will. Can't imagine it didn't at some point come up. Hey, this Sunday, by the way, is Valentine's
Now,
Day.
when and how did you learn that the Super Bowl was on Valentine's Day?
When my wife reminded me of it this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my wife's not a big Valentine's Day person, which is great, very helpful and great. Now, I usually try to over-deliver
Sure.
on the under-promise of nothing happening on Valentine's Day.
Box of chocolates.
But this will not be the case. And look, the NFL is pretty much bulletproof, so this will be an interesting dynamic, of how bulletproof is the National Football League. And are they going to need some sort of other romantic subplot like the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce subplot to really get them through this Valentine's Day Super Bowl Sunday?
Don't know if you know they got married recently in New York City at Madison Square Garden. They shut the whole city down. It was a
Didn't know.
big deal. You didn't know? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hadn't even heard about it. Didn't
I
even know they were
figured.
engaged.
I'm going to guess the NFL will remain bulletproof when it comes to this, and it's going to be a big day for us because it'll be the Chiefs and the Bears
Yes.
in the Super Bowl.
That's a great point.
It'll be Patrick Mahomes against his protege, Caleb
yes,
Williams.
right. The next Patty Mahomes.
So,
Good
Taman,
point.
if you want to come over, dinner's at 4. It'll be a fun day.
Are Cowboys fans allowed?
Yeah, you guys can. Yeah.
Yeah, because the Bears will have beaten the Cowboys in the NFC Championship game. First appearance for the Cowboys in the NFC Championship game since the 90s, so that'd be a big deal.
I want to throw this out there. Just imagine the amount of babies who are born for which team's fan base wins the Super Bowl on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So November's going to be a big month.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, November's going to be a big month. There's going to be a lot of Patrick's
Patrick's
and Caleb's.
Is that, how do you spell
Caleb's?
Patrick's?
Patrick's
Caleb's.
running around and Caleb's
Patrick's.
running around. Who's your receiver? Luther Burden?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of Luthers. That name's coming back.
All right, Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. It's interesting. There were two pieces that came out this weekend to sort of compare and contrast Kenny Dillingham's flirtations with Michigan, with Kalani Sitake and Penn State. And thought, let's just start with the Dilly one. It appears through some of these quotes that Dilly maybe got closer to Michigan than we anticipated at first. But what came out from this piece from USA Today was that Kenny Dillingham actually called Kyle Whittingham to sort of seek advice and guidance on the Michigan job. Moreover, hey, I'm not going to take this job, but can I ask you for some advice here? He said, quote, I actually called him early in the Michigan process, talked to him about his choices and his family and things that he'd never sacrificed. And then he talked about what kept him at Arizona, and that was, or Arizona State, and that was the commitment to continually improving. He said, if everybody's improving at an 11% increase, we've got to be at 12, 13, 14. We've got to bridge the gap. Otherwise, I don't want to be here to babysit an average program. That's not the vision. I want to build a program and understand we're not going to be like some schools that somebody can show up and they can flip it upside down tomorrow and become this. So as long as we're building to what I think can be a championship program in the long haul and as we go, that's what I care about, end quote. So sort of bringing to light the Sitake Penn State piece, there was actual monetary value associated with him coming back. Hey, I need this. I need more money for my staff, more money for NIL. Dillingham was much more structural, much larger. It wasn't necessarily about money and having money for staff and having money for players. It was more of a, we need to build facilities. We need to make sure we have enough money for NIL. So it wasn't just specific to money in the same way of Sitake was looking, was looking for that. And look, BYU is further along. They don't need the same facilities that maybe Arizona State does. But I think this was pretty insightful into what will keep Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State, and that is he wants to be there, but he also wants to win at the highest level, which is something he's told us. I want to continually compete for championships, and as long as he has the things that he's outlining here, access to facilities, NIL money, etc., then he's going to stay and remain at Arizona State.
Yeah, I think the parallel between the two, and while the job openings were also similar in that they were both in the same conference, they were two blue blood type programs, but Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State and Kalani Sitake at BYU both stayed home. I mean, this is home for both of them. Kalani Sitake's been there forever, grew up in the state, coached at Utah, played at BYU. Kenny Dillingham, meanwhile, a similar situation where this is home for him. I mean, he's been a Arizona State lifer, and his pit stop was in the same conference previously in the Pac-12 when he was at Oregon for a couple of years. But outside of that, he's been at Arizona State his entire life. He was going to football games when he was 4, 5, 6 years old. His first core memory of Arizona State football is a huge game that Jake Plummer had back in the late 90s. So these guys were tempted by dollar signs and prestige and all those things that make those other jobs elite jobs, but they stayed home because they believe they can build that where they're at. And it was a very attractive offer for both of them. And I totally agree with, I think Dillingham, based off of this, tells me that he was closer to taking the Michigan job than maybe even Sitake was to taking the Penn State job.
Yeah.
It was real close, especially when you factor in, and I hate to use the term he's a family man, because every coach in one way or another is a family man. But Dillingham's situation is different, where his sister lives next door. His parents are on the same street. Like, they're all right there clustered together. But his entire family said, hey, if you take this, we'll just all come with you. So, it could have easily happened. There weren't really any obstacles for him in terms of taking this job, and for Arizona State to put together a lucrative enough package to keep him is massive for the program and the league.
Does it tell us anything about the ways in which certain Big 12 schools can keep their coaches? Because I think, if you zoom out on this, that's a legitimate question when the SEC or the Big 10 come calling for a Big 12 coach in football. I'm sure there are circumstances in which there's just no way the Big 12 team can keep that coach. But is this sort of telling in terms of the recipe for how Big 12 teams can keep those coaches from leaving and bolting?
I would think so, definitely, especially when you look at the reasons they stayed and where the two programs in BYU and Arizona State are at. Arizona State needs a lot of help when it comes to facilities, when it comes to all of the other things, the NIL piece of it. Meanwhile, BYU, they have the facilities. They've got top 10, top 15 facilities, top 10, top 15, top 20 definitely NIL support. Salt Lake City is one of the fastest growing tech hubs in the country, and they have a lot of deep-pocketed alumni and donors that they can basically pay whatever they want. And so Sitake had that piece. It was just him and his assistants. Dillingham needed a little bit of a raise for him and his assistants, but I think more so he needed a commitment to the future of Arizona State football when it comes to NIL, when it comes to facility upgrades, when it comes to really leaning into that brand and trying to establish a brand at Arizona State.
It's Big 12 Today at Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Jeff Woody, ESPN College Football and former Iowa State running back, joins us coming up in about 10 minutes from now. Athlon Sports, James, ranked the 16 teams by tiers for the Big 12 in 2026. We've talked through many of these, and we've even done our own consensus rankings. And I found, really not much that I disagree with when it comes to this ranking that Athlon put out. The tier 1 is Texas Tech and BYU. Tier 2 is Utah and Houston. And then tier 3 is a grouping of teams that we agree could potentially win the Big 12 if things go their way. Arizona, TCU, I believe Arizona State, as well as Oklahoma State were part of that Tier 3. What stood out to you about the Athlon tiering of the Big 12 teams?
No, I think that they got it spot on, and it's pretty similar to our Big 12 Today consensus poll that we put together that just wrapped up right before Media Days. I would say, though, who are the teams that are in Tier 4 or Tier 5 that could potentially jump all the way to Tier 1 or Tier 2? Right now, the teams that they have in 1 and 2, I don't disagree with at all. And then I get to Tier 3, and I see 4 or 5 teams when it comes to Kansas State, when it comes to Arizona, Arizona State, Oklahoma State, and TCU. Those are 5 teams that I think that's where it gets really interesting to me, because you can make a case for any of those 4 or 5 teams to break through and finish top 2 or 3 in the Big 12. I don't think it should be a surprise if that happens. But in terms of like identifying which team that is, for me it's K-State, it's Arizona, and then probably TCU. I'm much higher on TCU than I think most people. And Oklahoma State is becoming really interesting to me as well.
When you cross-reference the Athlon list with our list, with many of the others, SP Plus, with the Vegas win totals and Vegas expectations, it's interesting that we're basically the only ones that have BYU number 1. Now, you had Texas Tech 1, I had BYU 1, but in our consensus, we made BYU number 1. We're basically the only ones. Mm-hmm. So it's very much a contrarian take right now to where everybody else is. A few other observations. I know we've talked about this, but I think it's even more pointed that the more you look at rankings and how everybody thinks from a preseason standpoint things are going to shake out, that the schedule is going to play just such a crucial, critical role in this. And I think it's why K-State should be thought of probably in that conversation, as you mentioned. I mean, K-State avoids Texas Tech, BYU, and Utah. SP Plus projects them as underdogs in only 1 game at TCU. Wow. That matters.
Yeah.
Right? So if K-State has a quote-unquote surprise season this year and finds itself towards the top of the Big 12, none of us should be surprised because they have the talent to do so. We believe they have the coaching to do so, and they have the schedule to do so. And then contrast that with a TCU. TCU we think could be really good. Problem is their schedule is brutal. Back-to-back years.
Same thing with Arizona. Remember, the Big 12 scheduling matrix completely gets flipped on its head for this season. So when I look at Arizona, a team that I felt like benefited from their schedule last year, they didn't have to play Texas Tech. They did play BYU, and they beat Arizona State. Outside of that, they had a loss at Houston in the closing seconds. Those were the only teams they played that finished in the top half of the conference. This year, that schedule gets flipped on its head. It's much, much tougher. Same thing with an Oklahoma State is a team that people are really high on. I think they have a very challenging schedule, especially on the road. TCU is, as you noted, a very challenging schedule. And so it's hard to argue with these tiers based off of, I think they did a really good job of, and I don't know if this was intentional, but tiering these teams based off of their schedule. Like Utah in Tier 2, they have them as a top 4 Big 12 team. Utah has Devin Dampier and Wayshawn Parker, and then that's pretty much it. They lose just about everybody from their defense. They lose all 5 starters on the offensive line, but they have a very friendly schedule. So Morgan Scalley could win 9 or 10 or 11 games because I don't see them losing anywhere in their first 6. And if they're 6-0 going into mid-October, that's going to be a top 10 football team.
I also think for our couple of dark horse candidates here, I've talked a lot, I think, over the last week about Colorado looking less and less like a legitimate dark horse candidate because, Athlon has them 14th of 16, Tier 5. SP Plus has them dead last in projected record. It's now, based on all of the preseason expectations, seems far-fetched that they could have a good year this year, which I believe they will, and part of that is because I think Brendan Marion and Julian Lewis is a good pairing, but we'll get into this later. Deion is now more committed to high school recruiting than ever before, but that doesn't impact the 2026 class, which is as bad as it gets for high school recruiting for Deion. So I think, a lot of things point to a down year for Colorado, and then West Virginia, who's a dark horse for you, is all over the board. Athlon has them in Tier 4. SP Plus has them 16th in the conference in projected win total. But Athlon's projection is Tier 4, 10th in the conference, but expects them to get to a bowl game. So that's interesting, too, in terms of just the discrepancy across the board and how people and teams, how people view West Virginia.
Yeah, the Mountaineers are all over the place, which that makes them really interesting to me for this season. And really, you could break their season down last year into thirds. The first third was actually okay. They had a massive non-conference win against Pitt, and they did it with a freshman quarterback. And then the injury bug bit them, and it bit them bad. Mid part of the season, they're down to like their fifth-string quarterback. They're getting crushed. But then that last third of the season, they go 2-2. 2 close losses to TCU and West Virginia, and TCU and Arizona State. They beat Houston, and they beat, I believe it was Cincinnati. So we saw that last year, just in that one body of work, how Jekyll and Hyde they can be. The question I have is, which of these teams in like Tier 5 is going to have a breakthrough year? Because last year it wasn't just one, it was 2 going into the season. Houston and Arizona. If this exercise was for 2025, both of those programs would have been in the last tier. They were coming off a 3-win season and a 4-win season, and they broke through. So who are the candidates for Tier 5?
I would think Baylor. We talked about this last week. The talent profile is very high. I think from an SP Plus offensive perspective, like Bill Connolly has projected their offense to be pretty good, which says a lot because of all that they lost on offense, but it's the pairing of Spavital and Lagway. And then I think the Klanderman piece. So for me, Baylor is a team that if anybody exceeds, could be there. Cincinnati's interesting just from an offensive line perspective. Like, we're very low on Cincinnati. We have them 16th in our consensus, but if any team can figure it out based on having a really good offensive line, that would be Cincinnati. Those are two certainly that come to mind from a Tier 5 perspective.
Yeah, I look at Baylor, and then I look at UCF as the other team that I would throw into the conversation. But Baylor's it for me because in the past, Baylor has spent a ton of money, and they've just recruited at a really high level at the skill positions offensively. Running back, quarterback, receiver. Well, this year, like, their receiving core maybe isn't quite as talented, but it's still very capable because they dumped more money into their offensive line. And the 3 transfers that they brought in that are expected to be day one starters are guys that grade out at a really high level. Some of the best G6 offensive linemen in the country. You pair that with Lagway, who we expect tremendous growth. If you missed it, he's doing a ton this offseason that we really like with this VR headset, working a lot on breaking down coverages and the schematics of defenses. And then they get Dawson Pendergrass back at running back, who was already part of their budget for last year. So they didn't have to spend anything there that they didn't last year. So they loaded up on defense. I'm starting to really like the strategy and the pieces that they've put together.
It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Let's check in on Iowa State with our buddy Jeff Woody. Plus, on the way, evaluating the top football programs in the Big 12 Conference. Could that have something to do with the newest members? It's all coming up. This is Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio.
UAB, then New Mexico, now here with the Utes. Bray motions out. Ficklin delivers a strike towards the front.
Gets the football to start the third quarter. I don't want to give them an opportunity for points here. Left side run, big hole, the cutback, and to go in the West Virginia game, but he made a difference against BYU a week ago.
Cinnamon motion, Ficklin keeps it, has some real estate in the plus territory, off to the races, and the true freshman quarterback on
as the Wildcat quarterback. He fakes it to Dampier, the quarterback, and keeping it is Parker, breaking a tackle. Parker into the
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Joined now by our buddy Jeff Woody, the former Iowa State running back, and now with ESPN play-by-play. What's going on, Jeff? How are you?
Not much, man. I'm just kicking it, and it's funny. My wife and I were having a conversation this morning as I was getting on here. And she's like, "What are you going to talk about?" I was like, "Oh, probably Iowa State stuff, Big 12 stuff." And then I was like, "You know what would be really thinking about is like the soap opera that is each team in the conference. Have you guys I'm sure you have the actual soap opera dynamics of pretty much every single school in the conference as you're going through the summer."
Okay, try us.
So let's just not school by school, but the ones that you come to mind.
Sure.
Iowa State. What happened between last football season and this football season? Definitely a soap opera. Matt Campbell goes to leave. All the players go with him. They get Jimmy Rogers. He comes in. Then Jamie decides to retire between last football season. He's going to be gone before basketball season. And all that turnover, okay, that's one individual bit of a soap opera. Colin Klein comes back to Kansas State. Some of the players come back. Some of the players don't. Avery Johnson, Colin reunited. Texas Tech. Don't even have to go there because that one's pretty obvious.
Utah.
You have Kyle Whittingham, retires. Then you get Morgan Scalley that comes in as the head coach, but then Whittingham goes out to Michigan because they back up a truck of money. Well, why'd they have to back up a truck of money to him? Because that coach decided to make some poor life choices. And then you go down to in Orlando, you have Scott Frost in his second year coming back as the prodigal son, having gone and didn't do well and coming back. Can he turn it back around? And the TCU with having being the top dog in the conference for a while, then losing a quarterback, and now you're trying to rebuild it from every team has their own little soap opera. And I was just thinking this is an incredibly interesting conference. So I don't know. It was just my wife asking, "What are you talking about?" And my brain going, "Well, we could go a billion different directions."
It's a great point. I mean, yeah, it's funny because individually I recognize those things, but then collectively it's yeah, there's a lot of drama here.
It is. It's such an extremely. I mean, Yormark's a great commissioner, and he's trying to get storylines. I feel like it's too well engineered, man. It's too well engineered.
So, Jeff, do you think, with all that said, that opens up the league for even more chaos this year? We've put together our consensus preseason poll here on our show, but what does that say ultimately about what could happen this season?
Well, I think you're right. There's not a lot of teams. Everyone, I would say you'd have to put Texas Tech, BYU 1-2 in either setup. That's going to be, they're going to be up there. However, Texas Tech quarterback situation is wild. I mean, how healthy is Will Hammond going to be, and do they have someone to orchestrate the offense, despite how good that defense is going to be? So they're not an undisputed champion. And then BYU, they're going to be really, really good. But they also tend to win, even in the last 2 years, they tend to win a lot of really close games. At some point, the coin's going to flip the other way, where they're not going to win that 27-24 game. They're going to lose that 27-24 game twice, and then they become 9-3, which opens the door for someone else. So, I think because of all that chaos and turmoil, and I think because the overall quality of the league is pretty good. A lot of people are saying the Big 12 is down. I mean, kind of, sort of, but Avery Johnson, I'll go back to Kansas State. Avery Johnson, if he plays, now that he's got Colin Klein, who is basically just like Avery Johnson 1.0, he was a little slower, didn't throw as well, and now is his coach. If Colin Klein can unlock Avery Johnson to play like Avery Johnson's capable of playing, and they have even the semblance of a defense, Kansas State might be an 11-1, 10-2 team because he's that good. But they also might not. And you look around the league, and there's a lot of those teams. Utah is another one of those teams. If I told you Utah went 11-1, you'd be like, okay, yeah, a couple things broke their way, but that makes sense. So the league is wide open, a lot because of roster turnover, places like Iowa State, but a lot because I think the overall quality of the teams is you have got 12 pretty good teams, and then who's going to come out and be the elite one or two?
How surprised were you by the Jamie Pollard news, and who's next?
I surprised, yes. But I would also say there's a new president of the university coming in, which is the only guy that would be Jamie's or the athletic director's boss. And I think the way that the Matt Campbell stuff happened, I don't know if it was necessarily avoidable in any way, but you have a new president coming in who wants to go, hey, let's not have that happen again. And I'm guessing that conversation with Jamie was something to the effect of like, hey, let's go to clean this up and fix this up or whatever. And whether Jamie said like, man, I don't want to do that again, I'm done with it. And it was Jamie's idea, or whether it was the president's idea saying like, hey, let's fix this. And Jamie was like, I'm done with it. I'm guessing that the emotional toll that round of whatever happened, I think that was more of a factor than Jamie will probably admit. It's just the difficulty of that 3-month period weighed on him more. So like, yes, but then you put yourself in Jamie Pollard's shoes and you're like, okay, like you're leashed to this guy with Jimmy Rogers one way or the other because of what happened. And like, I've done enough good at Iowa State. I mean, and it would be hard to argue that there is a more important figure in Iowa State athletics ever than Jamie Pollard, as far as getting it from where it was to where it is. So a little bit surprised, but also like that dude's been through a lot. I mean, he's had cancer in his tenure as the athletic director. And then the whole Cale Sanderson thing happened, ended up going to Penn State. He ended up getting TJ in, ended up getting Fred Hoiberg. Fred Hoiberg left, ended up getting Paul Rhodes, or Gene Chizik, then Paul Rhodes, then Matt Campbell, then the whole Matt Campbell thing. So it's been a lot that's happened, and Iowa State's in a better place than when he got there. But I can also understand that like the lifespan of an athletic director is like, this is a lot. I'm cool with going to the lake and just relaxing a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. And man, he has hired a ton of coaches. So when you think back over his tenure, like what are some of the highlights of his time there?
I would say the highlights got to be, I mean, it's got to be Matt, like it has to be Campbell, because if it's not, I mean, the football program, I'm biased, but I also have numbers. The football program is the most valuable asset that any university has, and especially in this state, where the University of Iowa is always good. Since Hayden Fry got there in the 80s, like they've been pretty good, and they've had a couple years that are down here or there. And so if you're trying to compete on with the minds and the eyes of the state of Iowa, in addition to nationally now with the Big 12 and reaching there, you need to have a good football coach. And I would say Matt would be the most important one, but then you got to dominoes back to say, okay, if Paul Rhodes wasn't there to make it kind of fix what Gene Chizik broke, that would be another one. But then Fred Hoiberg and TJ Otzelberger are the two other ones that are right up there, because now Iowa State with TJ is, I mean, arguably one of the best basketball programs in the nation consistently year over year, and that was hired by Jamie Pollard.
How do you think Iowa State's going to be this year, Jeff?
That's the soap opera, man. They've got, I think they had to replace like 73 players. So your roster is only 105, like it's not like there's a whole lot of continuity, but based on what Rogers had to do this at Washington State last year. I think they had to replace like 65 guys at Washington State last year, and the schedule was a little bit different, but he was able to put a team together that I think lost to Ole Miss by 7 early on, and then ended up winning 6 games. But of those games, that I think like 4 of those losses were losses by 7 points or less. So when you say that they have to replace a lot, this staff has already done that. And so taking the learnings from having to replace the entire roster, what's the most important thing you need to go out and get is you need to get guys that fit the system you want to run, but you need to get an offensive line, you need to get a quarterback. I think 14 of their commits were offensive linemen, and I think those were the highest rated commits that they had. I think the offensive line has a chance to be pretty good. And then Jalen Rayner from Arkansas State the dude's played a zillion snaps of football. So I think the quarterback will be good. Offensive line will be good. I have the most confidence, though, in the defense. because the defense is going to be completely different than what Iowa State has done in the past. It'll be much more Arizona and much less John Haycock. So much more aggressive, downhill, blitzes, stunts, taking the fight to you. And so a lot of the defense is going to be strong. Where I will say the question mark lies is in their ability to run the ball. Because the way this defense is run is they're going to attack, stunt, blitz, twist. They're going to challenge the offense to execute under a ton of pressure. So that means they're going to get maybe 7 or 10 TFLs and sacks per game, but they're also going to give up 3 plays of 25 yards or more, like that kind of balance. It's, do those 3 plays of 25 yards or more, is it a big post that gets caught, tackled, and then you're back in, or is it 75-yard touchdown? Well, on the flip side of that, if you can't possess the ball, then you put that defense out there more, and it becomes easier as the game goes along to see where the blitzes and twists and stunts are coming from, so it becomes easier to catch as an offense, and it becomes, you put them in situations where those big, deep plays happen more often, just because out of sheer percentage. So if the Iowa State offense can't run the ball, then it's going to be really difficult for them to explosive themselves back into the game. But if they can run the ball effectively, then it's going to be a very difficult team to beat, because what they can throw at you with this defense is going to be extremely aggressive and all over the place and really, really physical. So how's Iowa State going to be this year? In my head, I've got them anywhere between 5 and 8.5 wins. Like 9 would be kind of surprising. But if they won 8 games or they won 5 games, I would have the exact same level of, yep, that's expected. So to me, it is entirely predicated on how well they can run the ball. And if they can run the ball effectively, they'll be really, really good. If they can't run the ball effectively, they're going to find themselves on the short end of a lot of 10-point losses.
Mm-hmm. Jeff Woody is an ESPN analyst, played running back at Iowa State from 2009 to 2013. So offensively, we were trying to get a feel for what they're going to look like in terms of personnel packages. Do you think offensively, from what you saw at South Dakota State and Washington State, is it similar to what Iowa State has been in the past? How do they unlock that ground game?
Well, I think it's going to be more similar to what what South Dakota State has been in the past. But I do think actually a reasonable comp, and this sounds really silly unless you watch them a little bit, I think it's going to be pretty similar to Iowa last year, because Iowa last year had Mark Gronowski. So with Gronowski, that was a South Dakota State guy, and then they tailored the offense to him, which is you've got 2 tight ends on the field most of the time. But if you don't have 2 tight ends in the field, you've got a physical wide receiver, and they've got a pretty decent physical wide receiver bunch. And then your running game is predicated both on the running backs and also on the quarterback's capacity to take 15 carries a game. So I think it's going to be multiple. You're going to see it under center. You're going to see in the gun. You see multiple tight ends. You're going to see multiple wide receivers. You're going to see a lot of different things. But I think the root of what it's going to be is a shotgun, physical, multiple tight end set that's going to try and use the speed in the backfield that they have with the physicality they have up front. That would be my guess. But I also think you don't know what you got until you put it out against somebody else. So they're gonna practice it, and you go against SEMO, and then your game 2 is Iowa. It's gonna look a lot different in week 7 than it does in week 1, based on what actually shows up on the field.
Jeff Woody, former Iowa State running back, now doing great work on TV for football play-by-play and color commentary. Jeff, you're the best. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, fellas.
Thanks, Jeff.
Jeff Woody joining us here on Big 12 Radio. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. USA Today took a stab at the top football programs in the Big 12 moving forward, and, well, certainly there's some question marks around the decisions, but ultimately it's the newest conference members that seem to be at the top. We'll get into that next. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Juju cash it in. Instead of tackle for loss as Jamori Robinson flashes. You see right there that burst from the former American Athletic Conference Defensive Player of the Year.
The last break. Well done by you. It really is an alignment process, and it's not even a fake punt ball.
Second down, it is Whitman on a play fake. And pressure's coming. He got away from the first, but not the second. Set down by Corey McIntyre to bring up third down. Explosive runs. Their quarterback involved. Six appeared to pounce on it as he coughed it up at the mesh point. Brett Perry, number 5 for West Virginia, up in the box. LJ Martin, kickballs freshman game. Corey Robinson brings him down. Robinson was the defensive player of the year for the American Conference last year for UTSA.
Big 12 today, along with James Westling. I'm Ari Temkin. We are presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. We're going to have Will Hammond on the show tomorrow. So make sure to lock in for that. Texas Tech quarterback Will Hammond will join the show tomorrow. Along with James, I'm Ari, Big 12 today. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league. So different, according to Jordan Mendoza of the USA Today, that no Power 4 college football conference has had its program hierarchy wildly changed in the 21st century more than the Big 12. I think that's pretty accurate. And in terms of just the future trajectory of these programs, this is always a fun exercise to undertake during this part of the offseason, James. Sort of evaluating who's at the top from a hierarchy standpoint, where everybody's going. And so USA Today took a stab at it, and I'll be honest, I was shocked at where USA Today had some of these teams. And shocked to say, it's really hard to agree with many of them, including Utah at 1, BYU at 2, K-State at 3, TCU at 4, Arizona State at 5, Texas Tech at 6. What?
Felt the same way.
Yeah.
And Texas Tech at 6 is my biggest issue with this list.
And then Colorado at 7? What?
So lists like this are certainly subjective. So is the criteria, what have you done for me lately? Is it NIL budget? Is it historical success? All of those things combined, to me, this list would look very different. Okay, Texas Tech at 6, and I'm not necessarily saying they should be number 1, but 6 is absolutely ridiculous. Number 1, there's more historical context with Texas Tech than I think this particular writer gives them credit for. Patrick Mahomes and Mike Leach and Texas Tech changed the game of college football forever with their air raid, not really a run and shoot, but it was up-tempo, no huddle, scoring 60, 70 points a game. Now everybody is trying to do the same thing. We're seeing the game evolve back to more ground game and tight end, but there was a 10, 15-year period where everybody was trying to replicate that offensive success.
Right. Mike Leach initially, and then when Mahomes comes in, I think playing for Cliff Kingsbury, it's the same type of offense, but to your point, here's a guy that's, at this point, one of the great quarterbacks to ever play the game, that's played at your school as part of that great offense that, as you said, Mike Leach ushered in.
And they had a team that was in the conversation to play in a national championship game. The Michael Crabtree, Graham Harrell 09 team that won 11 games and were a top 5 team. People remember that season. So when you pair that with a program that just shattered a program record for NFL draft picks, just had the number 2 player taken off the board overall in David Bailey, a team that NIL-wise is competing with everybody else in the nation as a top 10 program, you factor all that, and just winning, Big 12 championship, college football playoff bye, the first Big 12 school ever to get a bye in the college football playoff in this format. You couple all that together, I don't see how they're number 6. That makes absolutely no sense.
No, it's number 1, and I think it's number 1 for the reasons you outlined, and that is there's got to be a historical context there that says, this program has shown an ability to be successful over time. But I would weigh that 20 to 30%. The majority of what I'm weighing against this in terms of this ranking is, what's your future trajectory like? You'd be hard-pressed to find a program in the Big 12 that doesn't have a better future projection and trajectory than Texas Tech does. They would definitely be number 1 on my list for those reasons. And, the money, access to money, availability of money, those things are hugely important. It's also interesting, too, that you have Kansas State and TCU back-to-back. Now, not to say that I disagree entirely with K-State, because I think there is that historical context. But it's funny because K-State's ranked ahead of TCU despite basically the exact same reasoning. K-State has the history. Under Bill Snyder, they had tons of success, the Big 12 championship, yada, yada, yada. It's TCU did all that and then won a playoff game. Right. They've won more conference games than anybody else over the last, 5 years. So why wouldn't they be ahead of TCU, of K-State? They're basically, TCU right now is doing exactly what K-State did for a large portion of time. And you'd think right now that moving forward, TCU may have a better opportunity moving forward? I don't know. To me, you can make an argument either way, but if you're making the argument for the historical context, for me, the more immediate historical context belongs to TCU.
Yeah, I mean, they just played in a national championship game 3 seasons ago. Kansas State has gotten close, but that was back in the 90s and the early 2000s. And then they had a run with their now head coach, Colin Klein. I think those two are splitting hairs because with TCU, the year that they got in the college football playoff, they didn't win the Big 12 championship. K-State beat them. But then also, like, I would even include, I would put Oklahoma State in that same category. Yeah, the last 2 years have been abysmal, but the year before that, they were in the Big 12 championship game. They have had a tremendous amount of sustained success and now really have new life. BYU, I would have BYU higher than Utah. BYU's won 3 in a row in the series. They're trying to become just the second time ever since the early 1980s for one of those two schools in that matchup, BYU-Utah. Nobody's won 4 in a row since like 82 to 86. And just that Y logo, that bright blue jersey, the mountain backdrop, and then the NIL support and the recent success. The only thing they haven't done is churn out NFL-ready talent. But I think that's the next step for BYU. So my list, and we didn't compile our own, but it would look very different than this one.
Yeah, I would have Tech 1, BYU 2. I would probably have 3. I mean, you know, one of the teams that's not even mentioned here that I'd probably have in my top 5 would be Baylor, which sounds odd given their current situation, but Baylor has won 3 Big 12 championships since 2013. I mean, think about that. There are very few teams that could claim that. And so, like, it feels like the immediate historical context of, hey, this team has shown it can win Big 12 championships, have it broken down, and then build it back up again to win it again. They have the money and the resources. They have the fan base. Like, Baylor, to me, may be the most underrated program in this regard.
And he has them number 10. Okay, you noted the 3 outright Big 12 titles since 2013. The most of any current member, by the way. And then the RG3 component, where you've got,
right?
Was he the number 1 pick? He was a top 3 pick.
Yeah, he was not number 1.
He won the Heisman. You had the Art Briles,
he was number 2.
Thank you. The Bryce Petty
just like
offenses. Like, it wasn't just RG3. Even post RG3, they were still competing for Big 12 and national championships. I mean, they were a top 5 team nationally. So them at number 10 is way too low. Like, if I were to tier these teams, I would have BYU, Texas Tech in that top tier with the next tier probably including, I would include Utah there. They've got the best home winning percentage in the league since 2003. But they've also been kind of hampered by 5 losing seasons since 2000, all under the great Kyle Whittingham. Like, they've had some really down years. But I would put Utah, probably Kansas State, bless you.
Thank you.
TCU, and then Baylor in that next tier. And then after that, that's where I'd throw in Colorado and Arizona State. Schools like Houston, and also this guy lost all credibility when he wrote Central Florida to identify UCF. I would put like UCF and Iowa State in that next tier, and maybe even Cincinnati. Remember, Cincinnati was the first Group of 5 team to ever play in the college football playoff back in 2021. Those Desmond Ritter teams and Sauce Gardner. You've got the Kelsey brothers. Like, there's a lot of pedigree with Cincinnati too.
Yeah, and I guess my question is, how much do you weigh pedigree versus like current trajectory, which is obviously hard to predict because you're going off of like what we've previewed for this season. I think just like the how firm is their coach, that's a big part of it. How much money do they have access to? I think that's a huge part of it, right? I mean, if I'm sort of power ranking the features for which how you should characterize these programs and how you'd rank them, I think like how firm is the coach? How much money do they have access to? Where are the facilities at? And then obviously weighing the histrionics to it as well.
Yeah, and like let's identify our top 5 for 5 years from now. Let's say 2031. Who are those programs? Because I went back and I looked at 2020 was the COVID year, so I went back to 2019. The Big 12 looked very different just 5 full seasons ago. Baylor was 11-3 and 8-1 in the league. Then it was Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Iowa State, all kind of 8 or 9 wins. And then TCU and West Virginia were still trying to find their footing in the Big 12. Texas Tech, by the way, just 5 football seasons ago, full seasons, went 4-8 and 2-7. So that magnifies how much can change
In 5
over the
years.
next 5 years.
Well, think about Iowa State. I mean, even last year, a year ago, if we had this conversation, we would project that Iowa State would be top 5, given how firm the commitment was for Matt Campbell and what that meant for their program. It remains to be seen, obviously, what Jimmy Rogers will do in terms of putting his program at the top 5, which is why I think it's very much an unknown. And at this point, you probably have to put them at the bottom 5 of the league just because it's so unknown. So I think it's extremely well stated how much can change in 5 years. The question is, will we see that much change in the Big 12 over the next 5 years? Or will the next 5 years produce a much more predictable top 5?
At the rate college football is evolving, I think it's going to be mass chaos. We know the college football playoff is going to look different, whether it's 16 or 24 or 136, who knows? If this Protect College Sports Act, even if this one doesn't pass, in the next 5 years, we could see something similar. Is there collective bargaining? You've got the Stanford story that we're going to touch on here in less than a half hour. So conference realignment, is it paused or is it full throttle 5 years from now? What do the television deals look like? There's a lot of moving parts. But like the 5 schools that I would identify that I think can withstand that, and I'm not saying others can't, but these are the 5 that just stick out to me. I would go Texas Tech. I would go BYU. I would include Utah in that mix. I would include Kansas State. And then probably the next, I'd either look at Arizona State or Oklahoma State. I see those 2 programs. I see Arizona State on really solid footing as of today, and I see Oklahoma State on really solid footing going forward.
Give me those again.
I had Utah, BYU, Texas Tech, Kansas State, and then I kind of split number 5 with Arizona State and Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably go Texas Tech, BYU, and then I'm trying to figure out, like, the Utah,
And, like, where do you put
Arizona State, K-State, Oklahoma State, Baylor,
Or-
TCU.
Does Baylor bounce back? TCU. Are Houston and Arizona, have they officially arrived? Can they withstand their success? There's a lot of questions.
Yeah, well, and I think with Baylor, it's more of a, even if things go south this year and Aranda's replaced, that this is still a program that we've seen under multiple coaches can still win and compete for Big 12 championships, regardless of who the coach is. Aranda, this is a big year for him in terms of the turnaround has he hired the right coaches and empowered the right people, and will he be a real, leader at the front of the classroom more so than how he's been. But I just think the three Big 12 championships, and to do it under 3 different coaches, shows a lot about the potential of this program and what they could have. Now with Arizona State, that's one of those where it's like, how firm is Kenny Dillingham? Well, he's very firm, as we've discussed, and he's continuing to sort of raise the profile, which is why I'd put him there. Oklahoma State, I think to your point, like, it's been a program that's had a lot of historical success, new coach that comes in with a ton of momentum, but I think it remains to be seen whether or not they can recognize that momentum and capitalize on it.
The only job, if Kenny Dillingham turned down Michigan and his entire family offered to move with him and keep that thing going, the only other job I could ever see him considering would be Oregon, because he's coached there, he's familiar with the program, unlimited NIL, you've got Nike in your backyard. But with Dan Lanning there, like, I don't see that job opening in the next 5 years.
Yeah, and I don't see Kenny leaving, because I think the things that he's identified need to be at the forefront are, Arizona State, under Michael Crow, it looked like, they don't care about athletics. And then Kenny Dillingham comes in and completely changes the fortunes of that athletic department. Mm-hmm. And whether or not Crow didn't want to fund athletics fully doesn't really matter today, because now he does, and he is. So the proof's in the pudding here. Regardless of how he used to feel under maybe when Herm Edwards is their head coach, is totally different than how he feels today, because Kenny Dillingham brings that juice and that momentum to the program that absolutely puts Arizona State in the top half at a minimum of the Big 12 in terms of future projections.
And he has an AD that is behind him in Graham Rossini. I mean, we've seen this kind of influx of commitment to Arizona State athletics. It started with Molly Miller, the women's basketball coach that they hired. She was very sought after by a lot of schools across the country. And then Randy Bennett has put together a very nice roster for this season. That's about as good as it gets for where Arizona State basketball was at and what they have there. And then the Dillingham piece and all the commitments that they've made to him to keep him locked in.
Yeah, ultimately, the USA Today piece is just a good jumping off point for us to have this discussion. I wouldn't put much thought into it because it's clear that we have a much better sense of this conference and the future trajectory of the members than lots of others do, including this writer for the USA Today. But it's just it's an interesting vantage point of where the Big 12 sits, and then from the outside in versus sort of inside out. Hey, we are closer to these teams and programs and kind of have a better sense of it. And I think if you balance, again, I probably wouldn't put as much into the historical context as maybe others would. I think it's probably 20 to 25%, whereas 80 to 75% of this would be, to me, your future trajectory, future projections based on, again, how is your coach? Are they firm in being there? Are they going to be there for the next 5 years? How much money do you have? How much money do you have access to? What are your facilities like? I think these are humongous factors in all of this. But it again speaks to sort of the crux of the Big 12 right now, which is it's not as predictable. I think you go to the Big 10, we could pretty readily identify which programs would be the top in 5 years. I think you do the SEC, you could probably pretty well identify who will be at the top of the next 5 years.
Same thing, yep.
It's less obvious with the Big 12, and probably as obvious with the ACC as well, but not as obvious with the Big 12.
Especially with the slide in the ACC of Clemson and Florida State.
Yeah.
They're two biggest brands by far, even North Carolina with where they're at as a program. This also tells me that this USA Today individual does not buy Texas Tech and what they did last year. It's almost like that's an afterthought. Oh, they got to the college football playoff. Oh, they got a bye. Oh, but they got blew out by Oregon. If he believed in the Texas Tech philosophy and the way that they scout and recruit and what they have on their roster this year, that wouldn't be an afterthought.
It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. Brett McMurphy from On3 joins us next. We'll talk with Brett about the latest developments on the Protect College Sports Act. Plus, there's some pretty significant news on North Carolina football, which we'll get to. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Success with Craig. Deep drop for Vida. Taking a shot to the end zone. Chris Hudson. He's got it for 6. It's coming, but it's picked up. Over the middle line, deep cross. And it breaks wide open. T.O. Richardson. Touchdown. Will throw to the end zone. And what an attempt. Fafita get a clean pocket and a deep shot for Wadley. He's got it again. Nunu leaves Weaver. Seconds on the clock. Fafita, 4-man rush this time, steps up, throws across the middle, and the pass is. And off is Kendrick Reese with a big opening, and he's into BYU territory.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. So glad to be joined right now by Brett McMurphy from On3. Brett, how are you?
Good to talk to you guys.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. Let's start with the latest news to hit this morning. That is that North Carolina has placed football GM Mike Lombardi on paid administrative leave, the school announced. This is relevant to the Big 12 because North Carolina is playing TCU overseas, so it'll be the second straight year that they're playing each other. So what do you know about this?
Yeah, nothing like checking the inbox at 8:02 a.m. and seeing North Carolina's put their general manager on administrative leave. I'm not going to speculate publicly what it is, but certainly for North Carolina to take this step, they've got to believe it's very serious, whatever has occurred, and especially the timing of this. Less than 6-7 weeks till the start of the season, or closer than that with Carolina and TCU. So, it's just another. I don't want to say black eye because we don't know what's going to happen, but it's just, the Belichick era at North Carolina has not didn't get off to a great start, and year two doesn't look much better. They're projected to be in the bottom third of the ACC. They had 2 Power 5 wins last year against Syracuse and Stanford, which I think combined to win 5 or 6 games. And, the thing is, when Lombardi came in and Belichick came in when they came to North Carolina, they said they were going to be the 33rd NFL team. And I think they're a lot closer to the 33rd ACC team at this point.
So when something like this happens this close to the season, what, I guess kind of behind the scenes from what you know historically, when people in this position are placed on leave, like what is it like for the impact that it could have this season, or is it more long-term future ramifications?
Well, it's probably more this season because, especially now with maybe, in previous years when there wasn't the portal and everything, teams change over, basically every year they're a different team. And you've got, 40, 50 different players, all that stuff. So I don't think, it's going to, impact them down the road for several years. It's more immediately for this year. But again, it's just, how you guys know how coaches are. The last thing they want is distractions. And especially, right when you're getting ready to geared up for the season, how does that impact them day to day? Who knows? Maybe not much at all. But again, it's never good for this to happen. And until it gets rectified, where and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but whether he's either dismissed, suspended, or cleared, it's always going to, every time Belichick talks to the media, he's going to get asked about it. And we all know Bill, and he's not the most forthcoming guy, and so he's probably not going to enjoy that either. So it's never great. It's just another Monday in college football.
Yeah, no kidding.
I can't wait for tomorrow.
Brett, you were at SEC Media Days last week.
I was, yep.
So what are the main takeaways that you had from that?
John Summerall won the press conference. So
Yeah.
Did the Gators one win already? He won the gold. Pete Golding won the silver. Lane Kiffin did not want to talk in the main press room, which is unfortunate because he can be very candid and open and honest, and he just I tweeted a couple things. He filibustered. They had 30 minutes to talk. He went for over 18 minutes with his opening statement. Hang the banner. Lane set an SEC record, longest opening statement. 2,807 words. By comparison, the fewest words in an SEC opening statement press conference was from the late, great Mike Leach, who said 5 words before taking questions. So it was, you guys saw the stuff on Twitter, on TV and whatever, the SEC kept hammering, well, we got to play 9 games. This is the toughest schedule. This is the deepest conference. And then Steve Sarkisian, if we would have played Jones Junior High School instead of Ohio State, we would have been in the playoff. And he talks about we have a real football schedule, and listed all the teams we play, and suddenly my phone starts blowing up from people that know Miami's history and said, by the way, Miami went 4-0 against that killer schedule last year. So, I do know that the coaches and the ADs are really concerned about, will the selection committee, in their mind, truly value the strength of the SEC schedule? And by that, when we get down to December, late November, December, how will the selection committee rank a 10-2 non-SEC team against a 9-3 SEC team that, in the SEC's mind, played a tougher schedule? Well, we're going to find out. But, I know this, you guys know this. The only constant that the selection committee every year has basically stood by is the fewest number of losses gets rewarded. Will that change this year? We're going to find out, because you look at the win totals from Vegas for all the SEC teams. Real quick, how many do you think are at 9.5 or higher for the SEC?
2?
Correct, 2. Georgia and Texas. So, again, people can exceed those numbers. They can go below those numbers. And if they only get 2 teams with 10 wins, I don't think they're going to get any more playoff teams than that.
Yeah.
I mean, until they show us they're going to, again, now if there's carnage, if there's only, Big 12 only gets 1, the ACC only gets 1, and the rest of the league is just, beats the heck out of each other, then the 9-3 slip in. But if you've got multiple Big 12 ACC teams at 10 wins, until they do it, I'm not gonna buy it. So, but there is real concern, and in Destin at the spring meetings back around Memorial Day, the SEC talked with representatives from the College Football Playoff about how the strength of schedule metric and how that would be factored in, and even Sankey admitted they were not happy with what they were being told. And it's kind of like what I've talked to you guys before. You can tell everyone to basically specify you've got to consider all these different things, but at the end of the day, it's a beauty pageant, and you're going to rank teams based on what you believe is most important, even though you're told to consider all these different things. So that was the big emphasis for the SEC is, how powerful our conference is, and we're the deepest conference. And I don't know about you guys, but when did it matter that the 14th and 15th and 16th best teams from your conference were better than the bottom 3 in the other conferences? It didn't when the SEC was winning all those national titles. I know that.
Right. Yeah. Was there any, rebuttal to the SEC's record in the college football playoff, and was the schedule kind of used as a reason for that, or what was just the general feedback that you got?
There really wasn't. I'm glad you brought that up. So hopefully you don't scoop me on my own tweet, but I'll share it with you. And you guys may know the answer. The 3 years that the Big Ten has won a national championship, the SEC has played 9 playoff games against other Power 4 conferences. How many wins do they have?
2.
Correct. By the Big 12 Texas Longhorns. Actually, no. Sorry, my bad. They beat Arizona State. Sorry. That was the first year they left the Big 12. But, yeah, Texas beat Clemson at home and then beat Arizona State, and Kenny Dillingham, I know it's been too soon to bring this up, but decided to blitz on 4th down. Yeah. That's the only 2 wins by the SEC against non-SEC teams against other Power 4 teams. Take out the Ole Miss win over Tulane. So on one hand, say that you're the deepest team, the strongest team, or whatever, but you're 2 and freaking 7 the last 3 years. That ain't great. Miami won 3 games in the last 9 months. You've won 2 in the last 3 years.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, but yet it's funny because this is a conference that's, conversation shifted from, winning on the field to look at all these other ways in which we're winning, except for on the field.
Yeah, it's fun. And there's, Brett Bielema, who's, I'm heading to Big Ten Media Days
Yes.
Later today. And, Brett Bielema is already firing out tweets about, his last 2 games against SEC teams, they're both wins. And, Nick Saban talking about, basically just because you win a national championship doesn't mean you're the best conference, which I don't – was that AI? I mean, I don't know. Where did that come from? I mean, is Saban totally in the bag now? I mean, I don't know. I respect him. He's the greatest coach of all time. But come on, man.
Oh, yeah, he's
if
carrying the
anyone
water.
would have said that when he won national titles, what would have his response been?
Great point.
Seriously. But everybody's got to promote their deal. I think the Big Ten, good news for Big 12 fans. You're going to hear a lot of promotion for the 2014 playoff. I mean, I was told that there was a point where the Big Ten would have agreed to go from 12 to 16 as long as eventually you get to 24. They talked to the SEC about it. The SEC said, yeah, that sounds great. And then the Big Ten said, well, okay, we want that in writing. So we don't want it to just be this agreement that, you can – that you're not bound by contract-wise. And the Big Ten said, okay, you're not going to sign it. And the SEC's like, no, we're not going to put it in writing. And then basically now I've been told the Big Ten's like, okay, forget it. We're never going to 16.
Wow.
It's either 12 or 24. So obviously that would have benefited the Big 12 greatly last year and in future years. I know Brett Yormark's, a big proponent of that. But I think the talking point for the SEC was, look how hard our 9-game schedule is. I think this week the Big Ten, the drumbeat will be, well, we played 9 games for the last 3 years and we've won 3 national championships. And, oh, by the way, 2014 playoff would be better because you're giving more people an opportunity to be a part of the tournament.
Brett, I look at your Twitter and I see a lot of birthday shout-outs. I can barely remember my youngest son's birthday. So can you hook me up with your birthday calendar?
So I get asked this a lot, and I appreciate it because I know it's funny because when people imagine this, people take shots at you at Twitter. They're like, oh, you're the birthday guy. I'm like, that's a negative. Like, whatever. So basically, Joey Johnston, who I worked with at the Temp Tribune, was doing some project, and he basically compiled all of the coaches' birthdays. And he, had it, and he's like, hey, Brett covers college football. So he said, hey, I've got this list of all these coaches' birthdays. So I just thought, oh, wow, that's cool. And so I thought, okay, you know what, I'll just tweet out on their birthday. And again, instead of just saying, here, I'm scooping myself again. Tomorrow's Mike Elko's birthday. How about that? So instead of just saying, hey, Mike Elko turns 49 today, put it in perspective and say where he is as far as the conference and over, nationally, oldest, youngest, or whatever. It's not to shout anybody out. It's just to give somebody an idea. So I've got a big list from youngest to oldest. And basically, I just go in, I schedule them weeks ahead of a time. I got to make sure nobody gets fired, so I don't accidentally wish somebody a happy birthday when they've been fired. And so, I just kind of kept doing it. And I, real quick, it's funny. I've gotten different responses. I've had, I don't think he'll mind me showing this. Jim Mora texted me when I put out his birthday, and I think he said he was 64, 65, and he texted me, he goes, dude, I'm not 65. And I was like, oh, man, I must have calculated the thing wrong. I just flipped out. I mean, because I did, there's 138 coaches. And so I deleted it. And then he, texted me back, he goes, no, I'm kidding. I can't believe I'm that old. I'm like, oh, man, I thought I was, screwed up. So, and then you've got, I guess, the statute of limitations has passed. So I had one former SEC head coach, and I won't say his name, but his initials are Hugh Freeze, and he reached out to me at 8 a.m. on his birthday a few years ago and said, Brett, hey, I just want to remind you it's my birthday.
Oh, my
today."
God.
And I said, Hugh, I go, Hugh, I got you. It doesn't come out until noon Eastern time. You're already locked and loaded. And he's like, I appreciate you. So that's the only coach that asked to make sure that he was on there.
Wow.
And then finally, more information than you ever wanted. So Pat Narduzzi, I've seen him at ACC Media Days. I will refrain from using any profanity that there was much profanity in a fun way. He sees me and he's like, what are you doing? He goes, you're killing me. I'm like, what? He goes, you put my birthday out there. I'm like, what's wrong with it? He goes, well, the problem is I've got to respond to all these people that wish me a happy birthday. And you put my birthday out there on Twitter. And I said, wait till next year. So then the next year, it's a week before his birthday. I've never done this with anyone else. And I said, hey, next week is Pat Narduzzi's birthday. I know how much he loves when people reach out to him. Please tell him happy birthday. And then a week later, when it was his birthday, a very, very special birthday to Pat Narduzzi. I know how much he appreciates all the well wishes. Love you, buddy. Happy birthday. And I see him again, and he's like, no. You know, I'll leave those words out. But no, he has fun with it. But it's just kind of a deal I've kind of done and kind of stuck with it. And I actually had one. I won't tell you this, coach, but I had one coach who was like, God, I hate when you do that because people don't think I'm that old, and then they see your thing, and they're like, dang, I didn't know you were that old. So it's just kind of stuck with it and done it, and people love it or hate it like everything else on Twitter. But I've just got a long list, and it's fun in November and December when I have to remove people and add people and shuffle the list. But last week I kind of, because somebody mentioned at SEC Media Days that Brent Venables was the oldest SEC coach, which is crazy because he does not seem that old, and he's only been at OU for a couple of years, and they've only been in the SEC for a couple of years. So then I thought, let me put out a list of the youngest and oldest coaches per conference. And it's funny, the schools that have the youngest coaches, they always retweet me. The oldest coaches, it's crickets. So that's kind of how it is.
Brett McMurphy on 3. Who knew that birthdays would be so controversial?
That's awesome.
Oh, I know. The other thing is, I know, it's like, people listening, I'm sure, have clicked off by now. They're waiting for your next guest. But an ESPN employee who I won't announce, I actually put his birthday on as a joke. It's like, hey, you're the ex-oldest at SEC or whatever. Congrats, happy birthday. Because somebody said, oh, I really love it, Brett McMurphy did. So I did it. So then what's funny is ESPN's PR director, I guess, felt guilty that they didn't wish him a happy birthday, and then they came in after I did it and wished him a happy birthday. ESPN PR had never wished him a happy birthday until I put it out there. So I guess I can guilt people into getting wished happy birthdays by including them. So you guys want to give me your birthdays, I'll guilt SiriusXM into wishing you one too as well.
Awesome. I'm going to do that. Thank you. Brett, you're the best. Brett McMurphy on 3. Always appreciate your time, buddy. Thank you so much. Be well.
Thanks. You didn't even ask me why I hate Kansas State, so I appreciate that.
We know you don't.
Well, he went to Oklahoma State. Of course he does.
Hey, that's like our brother in arms.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. So many parallels between the two.
Got it. Okay. Good to know. Big 12 today, Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. The latest on the Protect College Sports Act. And our Stanford players starting to organize. Could this lead to a CBA? Plus, Deion's new approach in high school recruiting. It's all coming up. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Whittington is tackled for a loss immediately by the first team All Big 12, Lee Hunter. Hopefully in motion as a handoff for Jackson. He is wrangled almost immediately by Lee Hunter.
You don't see very many 330-pound guys that can move like Lee Hunter right here. Fans get so much credit, and deservedly so.
Time running out again, and Peters is sacked. Lee Hunter and Romello Height.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Big 12 Radio is brought to you by the Full-Time Fans by Modelo. Shout out to all you full-time fans, many of them on our Big 12 channel YouTube page, streaming each and every morning from 7 to 10 a.m., including, well, we always get the Old Barn and Bracket Cat and many of our good James Faust, many of our good friends in that chat each and every morning. So make sure to join us there. Wet Blanket as well. Many others joining us each and every weekday morning, 7 to 10 a.m. Central on TuneIn. And, of course, Big 12 Studios, which you can stream and comment on YouTube. All right, the Protect College Sports Act. Well, it doesn't appear that we're going to have a vote on this on the Senate floor until after this August recess. And by that time, perhaps, getting close to a November election. Will that be too close in order for them to have a vote then? How will the vote go? It doesn't appear as though a vote would go well, which is probably most likely why we will not get a vote before the recess. So the update to the Protect College Sports Act is most likely not going to pass.
Yeah, and I remember when we were really in the thick of this, probably between 30 and 60 days ago. It was pre-Big 12 Media Days. there was a very hard line drawn in the sand in terms of the likelihood of this passing, and it was that a vote happened before the August recess. So to me, if there's no vote before, which to your point it looks like there won't be, it's essentially dead, because once they all come back from their extended vacation, it's on to bigger and more important things.
So we'll see what happens with this. You know, what's important to note is the progress that this bill does in fact make, James, which is, you know, it's the first time for any of these bills to actually get out of committee. So, you know, if the first step was getting a bill out of committee, which no bill previously had been able to do, at least this bill achieved that. But, as I've said all along, I don't think there's a bill that fixes it. It's, for me, about a collective bargaining agreement. And there's news out this morning via Ross Dellinger that Stanford football players are establishing the first ever chapter of the College Football Players Association. And Stanford is the first school in the College Football Players Association's 5-year existence to hit the membership threshold required to elect player representatives. So there have been, if you've been paying attention, other entities that have tried to organize in a way that would allow these players to collectively bargain. So far, none have really made it and become any, you know, become much in terms of being serious at all. I don't know how serious this one is, but it certainly seems to be more serious than either before. And it's sort of to the point of the bill. Like this is a slow step, slow moving process that could eventually land with a collective bargaining agreement, but will take many years to get there. And this is part of that process that plays out. But ultimately, it feels like more and more schools are warming up to the idea of collective bargaining in the absence of getting a bill passed or some other structure around the sport.
Right. So while we talk about Congress punting to at least September, you have these Stanford football players, which are very well educated, doing something that no team, no players in the country have ever done before. They organized, and it was well thought out. The first chapter, first vote, first real test of whether players can build any type of leverage from the ground up. From the player side, we are about to see. And you've got a fifth-year linebacker, Ernest Cooper. You've got an offensive lineman, Fisher Anderson, who started 10 games at center last year. So those two have been talking about this and planning for well over a year. I mean, this has been very well thought out. This wasn't a rushed because of the Protect College Sports Act. Let's try and counter. This is something that's been in the works for a very long time. So I'm fascinated to see where it goes.
Yeah, and look, I mean, at this point, the biggest hurdles remain, you know, the idea of employment status for these students, especially when it comes to public institutions. But I think more so than how close we are to actually getting there is recognizing how far we've come. Because again, like in this case, Stanford is actually hosting their students on campus to do this. So I think like just the openness of the university and administrators is huge. SEC leadership sat through a CBA presentation, and there is one athletic director that has come out in support. I think it's Tennessee's athletic director that have come out in support of a CBA. When you look at the Protect College Sports Act, the most important thing to me that's missing is there's no input whatsoever from actual students. It's insane to me that that hasn't been brought up. But you basically have a collection of senators, along with lobbying from the NCAA and member institutions, that are defining this bill. There are no student athletes, football players, football coaches involved here. A CBA is needed in order to get the input from those that are this very much impacts. But it's also, I think, again, very complicated. Like, it's easy for us to sit here and be like, this is what they need to do. That's the easy part. The complicated part is figuring it out. If you have a CBA and you've got a players union, well, what happens when the players in the portal are constantly changing teams? Mm-hmm. I mean, you only have a 5-year shelf life as it is at one school, but what if you're at 3 different schools? That's the difficulty, I think, and only just one of the main difficulties in trying to organize.
Mm-hmm. And I think with the eligibility ruling, that could have a trickle-down effect on the transfer portal and how many guys are willing to eat into that eligibility clock, because it's 5 to play 5 now. And this idea that Stanford is getting the headlines right now because it's been very well thought out, and Stanford's a very prestigious school academically. But this isn't the first time that we've gone down this road. So there's a college football PA founder, and the founder launched this group back in 2021, right as the NIL money started flowing in. He's spent 5 years trying to build real locker room buy-in for a players' association. And he kind of got a slap on the wrist because he dove too far in too quickly. He went and he met with a bunch of players at Penn State, and it backfired big time. A staff member actually walked into a team meeting where players were discussing unionization, and that wasn't sanctioned by the school at all, just the meeting in itself. And so it was this huge, big blow-up back in 22. But that actually got this founder back to the drawing board, right, to make sure he does this the right way. And he's saying that several more programs, not just in the ACC, but other power conferences, are on the cusp of forming their own chapters. He's not saying who or where or when, but he's saying that it is happening.
Well, I don't think we're going to be looking at conference-wide CBAs. I think ultimately each chapter will come together to form a CBA that will govern all of college sports. Now, maybe it's just football. Maybe there's a CBA for just football, which makes a ton of sense. And how you separate that from the other sports will be really interesting. But ultimately, you have a bunch of schools at this point in time that are kind of just throwing up their hands saying, what's going to save us? And if it becomes increasingly more and more obvious that a bill isn't coming to save us, quote unquote, I think a CBA becomes more and more attractive. And that's where the rubber meets the road here.
Totally.
It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. We've been spending time the last few weeks recapping what we heard from each coach and players during Big 12 Media Days a couple of weeks ago. Today we're focused on Iowa State and Cincinnati. What did we hear from Jimmy Rogers? What did we hear from Scott Satterfield? What did we hear from the players? It's all coming up next as we continue along here on a Monday. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Quarterback on a run through the right side, Isaiah Marshall. He's been through it a long time ago. He's here in year 6. Nice catch. Henderson off to the races with a vapor trail behind him. Pistol, QB keeper again, using over the right side. First down on second and short. And what do you make of the decision from Jim Zebrowski to kind of change
Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. James Westling, Ari Temkin on social at Ari Sports. He is at James Westling. You can always get the show via TuneIn. Download the TuneIn app if you've not yet already and search Big 12 Radio. You can also get the show via the Big 12 app. Check out the brand spanking new Big 12 app, which features breaking news, scores, highlights, and Big 12 Radio. Voila! So check it out, the new Big 12 app. Download it today and start listening. For the last couple of weeks now, as we've been back from Big 12 Media Days, we've carved out some time each and every show to replay some of the biggest and most important quotes from each coach and player that will help us preview each team. And so today we're talking about Iowa State and Cincinnati, two teams that are at the bottom of our Big 12 consensus rankings. Let's start with Jimmy Rogers, the new head football coach at Iowa State. I think a team that we expect a lot from in the coming years, but what's to expect from them this year with such turnover on their roster, we'll see. But here's what Jimmy Rogers said sort of as his culture and identity as a program builder.
In the new modern era of college football, when you take over a team, you have to be able to handle the situation that you walk into. And for us at Iowa State, it happened to be, due to the departure of Matt Campbell. I'm not going to complain about a situation that I was thrilled to take on. And you got to deal with things as they come. For me, I love the challenge. My wife thinks I'm nuts because she thinks I love, the stress of all of this. And it's surely stressful, but it's also a joy. I'm really happy with the team that we've been able to assemble. And I think that we can be really competitive. And I'm not going to, shy away from saying those things because I want our players to believe in that message of what we can become by doing it a certain way. And we're looking forward to the fall for sure for that.
Yeah, when I look at both of these teams, them finishing 15th and 16th in this conference almost feels too predictable because there's a ton of roster turnover at both Iowa State and Cincinnati. And for Iowa State, Jimmy Rogers has done more with less everywhere he's been. He was a huge part of building South Dakota State into an FCS juggernaut that got to a point where they were competing at the same level as North Dakota State, who won like 1 billion championships. And then he goes to Washington State, and I'm not sure there's any other coach, maybe in America, that could have won 6 games with the situation that he walked into, with a bunch of FCS transplants at Washington State that are now with him at Iowa State. So if I'm looking at the two, a part of me believes Iowa State can figure out a way to win 5 or even 6 games and make a bowl game.
Well, here's what Jimmy Rogers said about being in the Big 12.
Well, for one, it's extremely competitive. It's one of the closest, the point differential of win-loss is the closest in the country. It shows you that on any given week you're playing against a team that could beat any team in the country. And I think that the coaching in this conference is really good. And the depth and the balance of this conference is really good. And so for me, that was exciting. As a true competitor and a guy that wants to challenge himself day in and day out on his own growth and try to maximize this life that we're all living in professionally, I just, to be able to do this in such a tough conference against great players and great coaches, I think it's a no-brainer fit for me.
I mean, for the Big 12, to your point, the argument that Nick Saban made about what makes the SEC so good is probably actually a good argument for what makes the Big 12 so good, and that is what you just said, and that, even though we had Iowa State in our consensus at 15th, I'd be shocked if they finished. I mean, Jeff Woody, who joined us earlier in the show, said anywhere between 5 and 8 wins, he wouldn't be shocked. 8 wins seems shocking for a team with that much turnover.
Mm-hmm. 8 definitely does, but this is a league that is the most unpredictable in all of America because it's the most entertaining league on each and every Saturday because the games are closer and down to the wire compared to any of the other conferences, more so. I mean, Jimmy Rogers just said it there. You've got the league with the thinnest margin of victory, and that includes a Texas Tech, who was winning games by 30, 35 points per game. The league still, even with that, had the smallest margin of victory. So what does that mean for Iowa State? Well, Jimmy Rogers is a guy that his teams don't get penalized. They're very sound on special teams. They don't turn the ball over, and they get a lot of takeaways. So even if there is a talent gap here in year one, if they do all of those other things on a consistent basis, then you are a bowl team and maybe a 7-win team.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. Here's what Jimmy Rogers said about the toughness and grit that his teams usually play with.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it will become more and more of that when we can recruit in a timeline that we have the ties to recruit the Midwest a little bit more. Where right now, when you're creating a team of players from all over the country, you're looking for the best product and the best players that can help you immediately. And our team is made up of just that. These guys are from all over the country, different upbringings, different backgrounds, different playing, the amount of experience that they've had. But I am very confident in who we found and the right people because of how fast they've gelled together in the last 7 months and how willing they are to work and grow on a day-to-day has been really impressive to me and our staff.
It's important, again, to reiterate that Jimmy Rogers has already done this. He just did it at Washington State. Now the jump, from South Dakota State to Washington State to be able to do it is probably easier than the jump from Washington State to Iowa State. But again, wouldn't be surprised if this thing works out year one because he just did it. He just turned over a roster with a ton of new players to get to 6 wins, which the first time we interviewed him, he was completely disappointed by.
Right, and those players are now a year older, the ones that were with him at South Dakota State and then Washington State and now Iowa State, like a guy that they brought to Big 12 Media Days, their defensive end, Isaac Terrell. And then Jalen Rayner, I was really impressed by him. He's very cerebral. He was well-spoken. He was articulate. He brings his offensive coordinator from Arkansas State with him to Iowa State or vice versa, however you want to look at that situation. Yeah. But if you're building a program from scratch and you have a limited window, because remember the transfer portal was the smallest, the window was the smallest it's ever been, to bring in a bunch of experienced veteran guys gives you the best chance for success in year one right away.
Here's what Jalen Rayner, the starting quarterback for Iowa State, said about the factors that led him to the Cyclones.
I think it was definitely a factor, just knowing the fan base, what kind of school I was going to, what kind of program they were already established as, and then obviously with Coach Rogers coming here with a very winning background, and then himself bringing Coach Roll, offensive coordinator, who is very intelligent when it comes to football and game planning and things like that, and then also a familiar face with my offensive coordinator coming here as the quarterback coach. There were plenty of factors that factored into it, and obviously the fan base is definitely one that I got to experience, but that definitely was included.
Yeah, for Iowa State to have a surprise season, this dude has to have a big-time year.
And I think he's capable of that. I mean, he had big games against Iowa State the last 2 seasons when they've played Arkansas State. And, like, all of his numbers imply that he is a very capable, really good quarterback. He has better group of 6 numbers than a lot of other quarterbacks that are playing for power conference schools, but he's not getting the attention that some of those other guys have. Perfect example is he has better numbers at Arkansas State than Devin Dampier had at New Mexico, who was the preseason and ended up being the Big 12 newcomer of the year. So why was Dampier so highly sought after and thought of compared to Rayner? I don't have an answer for that, but I think he's very, very capable of having success in year one.
Yeah, I think it has everything to do with the situation and the program. In Utah, at that point in time, it's like, oh, what do they see in him? What do they like about him? With Jalen Rayner, fair or unfair, it feels like, well, they just tried to get whatever quarterback they possibly could.
Because they lost Rocco Becht, who was their staple. Totally agree with that sentiment.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at Cincinnati now. Cincinnati, big picture. Here's what Scott Satterfield said about this roster.
Yeah, I think, we do have a lot of our guys up front that are back, and I think that's good for us. Guys that played a bunch. We had one of the top offensive lines in the country last year, and
right.
The bulk of those guys are back.
Cotton, Tayo, Tengestal.
Yeah, they bring great leadership, and and then really kind of feed from there with our team. But there's still some other guys that have played significant minutes for us, and all our specialists are back. I think they're outstanding players, and so we do have a good nucleus there back. But it's like most teams, you're going to be bringing some new guys in, and we did bring some new guys in, and J.C. French is here with us, who we think is going to be an outstanding quarterback for our team. He had an excellent spring. He's had a really good summer, and I think he's a really good leader. So we're excited about what he's going to be able to bring to the table. But you're right, the receiver position, a lot of new guys, running backs, a lot of new running backs. Tight end room is pretty about the same. We lose Joe Royer, who gets drafted, but we do have a lot of guys back there as well. So we're excited about our team and what we have to look forward to this year.
I mean, Cincinnati lost a ton of players. Some of them got drafted, others are undrafted free agents, but many of them long-term staples, including Dante Corleone along the defensive line. The one thing, though, and this is maybe where we made a mistake in ranking Cincinnati 16th on our consensus board, was their offensive line. They have one of the best offensive lines in college football. Now, how does that translate to all the other positions on the offense remains to be seen, but if you're starting with as good of an offensive line as they are, that's a pretty good starting point.
Right, and I think a lot of coaches would rather have that foundation in the trenches than a bunch of really athletic skill position guys, but nobody to block for them. J.C. French is the hinge point to me. Speaking about Jalen Rayner just a moment ago, French is a perfect example. Rayner's numbers significantly better, but there's maybe more buzz or hype around J.C. French because of his velocity that he shows. For Cincinnati, the tight end room, and we heard Coach Satterfield say there.
Or Scatterfield.
My brain is scattered, and he's Sattered. He said the tight end room was about the same.
Yeah, right. What?
You just lost Joe Royer to the NFL. Who are these tight ends?
Right.
Is Hercules walking into the locker room?
We've got another NFL tight end ready on our roster.
Right, you're just going to churn out another all Big 12 tight end? I'd love to know who that is.
Yeah.
But he did note that, at the receiver position, we lost some guys to the NFL, and they did. Cyrus Allen and Jeff Caldwell, both guys that are in the Chiefs organization now. But then to your point, defensively, without Corleone, they were a completely different defense. I mean, teams were gashing them on the ground when he wasn't on the field. They also lose Jake Gaudet. Those are two huge holes that I think are being overlooked.
Yes.
But I do like Nate Woody, the new defensive coordinator.
More on the defense in a second, but one of the things we've spent a ton of time talking about throughout this offseason with Cincinnati is how bad they've been in the month of November. They've gone 2 years without a win in November, and it's cost them seasons the last 2 years. And if it happens for a third straight year, it'll cost Scott Satterfield his job. But here's what Sat said about November.
We haven't finished as strong as we'd like to finish. I think, if you go back last year, they were all good teams. We played.
Right.
We had to go to Utah play them at night. That's a tough place to play. We finished the season at TCU, again, on the road, a team that's a 9-win team at minimum. And then BYU was in the mix as well.
Yeah.
They win 11. So, we're playing some good teams, and they were close games. We're right there with all these guys. The other one was Arizona, and I think they had an outstanding year.
Yeah.
So
9 wins.
Yeah, 9 wins. So it's not like you're playing teams that, aren't very good. These teams are excellent teams, and you have to play excellent to win. We didn't do enough to finish those games out. I feel like we were right there in those games, other than maybe Utah. But, it's something that we focus on. We have to finish. Everything that we're doing right now is about finishing. And I think certainly at the end of the season you have to be able to finish. But some of that is due to some scheduling and who you're playing. There's some good teams in this league.
Yeah, some really good teams in this league. So he attributes their November slide, James, to scheduling. You buying it?
No, I'm not. I'm not completely buying it. I do think they had some tougher games the last 2 seasons, but they also had some winnable games. And then it was how they were getting beat in those higher more marquee matchups that was concerning to me. And their passing game just completely disappeared. And that was even with Brendan Sorsby at quarterback. And I think at first it was just kind of an afterthought, something that was happening. But now I think we're to the point where it is very much the headline. That's what, 0-8, 0-9 in the month of November?
Yeah.
That's something that is very much now
a thing.
A thing.
Yeah.
That the coaches are aware of, that the returning players are aware of. in that all Big 12 elite Joe Moore semifinalist offensive line, were they worn down the last month of the season? That's another concern for me. Was it a depth issue? Like, what was it? Because there have been winnable games.
Here is what Tarantayo, who is one of the best returners along that offensive line, said about what people need to know about Cincinnati this season.
I think the main thing is that we're really bought in. We're bought into the process, and we're bought in to do whatever it takes for the team to get the best outcome on Saturdays. And I think, once we start the season, you'll see a really gritty football team that it wants to compete and wants to win, and it'll scratch, claw, and fight.
And it's really interesting because it should be a given of the buy-in, right? But it isn't necessarily. And this is especially important for Cincinnati in this particular season because Scott Satterfield is hanging on by a thin thread here. So, meaning the buy-in is really helpful and gets you to the start of the season. But if you lose a few games early on, lose to Miami of Ohio in a rivalry game, things could unravel and unwind quickly, especially if the team recognizes that Satterfield's not going to be there for the long haul.
Yeah, and for me, it's not a buy-in question versus a talent question because Cincinnati had, I believe, the 14th or 15th net transfer portal class in the country. They lost a lot of really good players, and I don't know that they have the NIL budget, at least as of now, to bring in guys that are immediate plug-and-play guys that can compete at that level. Like, they lost their top two running backs, Tawi Walker and Evan Pryor. Evan Pryor, I believe, transferred to Florida or Georgia. He's at one of those schools in the SEC. The two receivers to the NFL. You're tied into the NFL. A $5 million Heisman-caliber quarterback in Brendan Sorsby. The anchor of your defensive line in Corleone. Your edge rusher in Jake Gaudet, who made up for a lot of errors because he was just a tackling machine. Like, I don't see on paper them being able to fill those voids. But if the offensive line can stay healthy and J.C. French is the real deal and they can unlock that ground game, there is a path. But, like, what's the expectation now for Satterfield, right? You're going into, year 5? You've gotten a little bit better every year you've been there. Is it to win 8, 9, or 10 games? How do the fans feel about a 4 or a 5 or even a 6-win season?
I think it's got to be, a minimum is a bowl game. And I think, even a bowl game at this point would sort of be hollow depending on how many wins you have and how good or bad you might look. How far they could go depends on the quarterback. Here's what Tarantayo said about J.C. French.
I think he's been really composed in the pocket. And, one of the first things he said during spring ball was, I feel really, really comfortable back here. And so I think that's really good to hear from your quarterback. And, giving advice to us and saying, hey, like, where's the pressure coming from? And then we tell him, he tells us stuff. And, it works both ways. It's a mutual relationship. And so, I think he's a great quarterback. And I think he's going to do great things this year. And he's got a quick release. He's composed. He's poised. And he just makes the plays when you need him.
So J.C. French last year at Georgia Southern had 20 touchdowns and he had 8 interceptions. He had less than 3,000 yards passing. He completed 64% of his passes. Those are modest passing numbers. But I think why Cincinnati sees the potential is he was in very much a ground-oriented ball control offense. And so those passing numbers are maybe a little bit mirrored because of that style of play. But everything you hear about him, the velocity, the decision-making, his leadership, those are all the things that you want in a quarterback. So maybe he is the real deal.
Yeah, right. But I think J.C. French is probably one of the biggest reasons why we picked Cincinnati 16th. We're just not believing it. So we'll see. And look, he's got all of the components to be successful. He's got an offensive line, which is a really important component to be successful. And they had a physical running game last year. It's just so funny to me, too, though, because Sorsby was so sought after that it feels like Scott Satterfield and Cincinnati were holding him back. That's what the market for Sorsby tells me. It wasn't just Texas Tech. There were a lot of folks after Sorsby.
So what were we missing?
Yeah. Or maybe they were missing something. I don't know. It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. If you missed Scott Draper with us in studio on Friday, you're not going to want to miss it. We talk about the future trajectory of the Big 12 when it comes to the schedule, because the schedule may be the most important component to Big 12 success. Yeah. We talk with him about that next. It's Big 12 today.
Montez retreating. That one's batted. That one's picked. And we got action in Lubbock. Skylar Gill Howard. A big man touchdown.
The 16. Dampier drops it off near side. Snowden looking for some blockers. And he won't get them. They're just jumping on him. Gill Howard. Just go get the quarterback.
David Bailey bearing down, and there's a sack, and it's Skylar Gill Howard. Bailey applied pressure from the edge. Gill Howard cleaned it up inside. 4th down. Couple of sacks, couple of tackles for losses in this game. Chris Berlin running here, and they're going to blow it dead, short of the line.
Figure out how to move the ball. Dampier fakes the toss. And he'll gain a yard, not a lot, as Skylar Gill Howard comes up with the tackle.
Keeping on the ground on 3rd and long to try to get something to put him in 4th and manageable. Burnett down at the 40.
Best Texas Tech defense I've seen in the last 10 plus years. That pass is intercepted. And again, it was Murphy under pressure. Lots of pressure.
Eric Sondheimer, the LA Times reporter who covered Bear Bachmeier when he was in high school. He's going to join us here in about 15 minutes on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. But let's talk scheduling, because it's also the schedule makers didn't do us any favors season. When we start to break down these schedules, every fan base has one reason or another to complain. But you noted a thread on Reddit. How would you grade the Big 12's scheduling matrix 2 years in? And there's a big piece from The Athletic that we might get to about scheduling lottery winners and losers in college football. But this is a whole thread of college football fans from this conference, and we'd love to know your thoughts. Chime in on YouTube if you're watching us there. How do we feel about the Big 12 scheduling matrix now that we're going into year 3?
Yeah, and this is from the Big 12 subreddit, so shout out to them. One of the moderators in the Big 12 subreddit asked the question, like, how do you feel? How would you grade the Big 12 scheduling matrix 2 years in as the conference enters year 3? First thing that stands out to me, for the love of God, is for some reason, for 100 years in sports, we called them divisions, and suddenly now, anybody who references divisions, they're calling them pods.
They're pods.
I don't really understand why we just had to make up a new word.
They're pods.
They're divisions. Why are they pods? This started happening when they started talking about bigger conferences and how we're going to separate the conferences. Should we do divisions? No. Divisions are old school. We used to do divisions in college football. Now we do pods.
Because we listen to pods.
I don't know.
We use pods for storage. I rode in a pod on my way up to the Arch in St. Louis at like 8 years old. It was the most terrifying experience of my life.
Very, very closed in and hot.
Like, not good.
Pods, college football insists on making up new names for things that have existed for many, many years.
Week 0, pods.
What's the 2-minute warning? Is the 2-minute...
2-minute timeout.
2-minute timeout?
Don't call it a 2-minute warning.
It's not a 2-minute warning.
I almost got fired for calling it a 2-minute warning.
It's not a 2-minute warning.
On air.
It's a 2-minute timeout, please. They're not divisions, they're pods. So that's my biggest takeaway. In fact, I just chimed in on the thread to make sure to mention that we just call them divisions. We don't have to call them pods. We don't have to do that. But basically, that was, I think, the prevailing sentiment from Big 12 fans in this Reddit subreddit was we should have pods. And so the one that was upvoted the most that people agreed with would be a pod, aka a division, featuring Arizona State, Arizona, Utah, and BYU. Makes sense. Another one with Iowa State, Kansas, and Colorado, kind of the old Big 8 without Oklahoma State. And then the other one would be Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Baylor, TCU. And then Cincinnati, UCF, West Virginia, Houston. So kind of like the old American Athletic Conference with West Virginia mixed in. Now, the funniest part about that is I don't know that those divisions make any sense. Like, I could see the Arizona State, Arizona, Utah, BYU one making sense. I, to some degree, agree with Iowa State, Kansas, and Colorado. But the other two were kind of like, well, we didn't really know where to put everybody else. And I think, to me, this sort of illustrates the point of, yeah, you may say you want divisions, but ultimately I think what we have right now with a rotating system is a way better system. I also think, like, I'm not a big fan of divisions in sports as it is because it gives an advantage based on geographical location. Now, I guess the regionality to me makes a degree of sense because it helps with the rivalry aspect of it. But beyond that, like, the only thing that I think fans overwhelmingly complain about, this is mostly K-State and Iowa State fans, is that Farmageddon is not every year.
Yeah. And that's kind of the biggest gripe when it comes to the current process, is that there's only 4 protected rivalries. BYU and Utah, the Revivalry, which is Baylor, TCU, KU and K-State, and then Arizona and Arizona State. So that's it. So some of those other TCU against Texas Tech or Baylor against Texas Tech, Kansas State and Iowa State, I think Oklahoma State and Kansas State has potential, or even Oklahoma State against a TCU or a Texas Tech has potential. So in terms of rivalries, where does the future look for the Big 12? Scott Draper just walked in.
Yeah, it's weird. We're talking scheduling matrix, and Scott Draper walked in.
Is that a coincidence, or is he going to pop on the show? Is this a coincidence?
Well, this is The Rock, you know.
Get in here. Like, let's do this.
Yeah, see, we're not really exposed to people a lot very often here in the studio. So when we see a new person, it's like, whoa, people.
Taman's orchestrating a symphony of signals over there, and I'm like, who's behind the curtain?
Yeah, I
it
thought
is the man that makes the schedule.
I thought for a second, I thought it was your wife. The way he was
I didn't know
looking
what
at
was
you.
happening.
He's looking at you like, over there. I don't know if you want to take this.
Didn't you guys notice I used the Draper liner today?
Oh, that's phenomenal.
No, what was that?
Did you know he was coming in?
No, I won't confirm nor deny.
All right. Okay. All right, Scott.
It's football season. I'm over here looking at the replay system. We got our officials in town this week, and our officials clinic, so it's football season. So I'm just coming over, making sure you guys are comfortable here. It feels not bad in here today.
Feels
right?
actually good.
That's good. That's a good thing.
We were talking yesterday. It feels like we're back home.
Yeah.
This feels.
Yeah, we missed being here. It was obviously a little bit warm, but happy that.
A little bit warm, yeah. It's understatement.
All right, Scott. Let's dive in.
Wait, so yeah,
Wait a minute, where are we?
So we're talking about the scheduling matrix.
Yeah.
There's a Reddit thread that's Big 12 fans. They mentioned that I think is there 4 built-in like rivalries every year, and then they're just throwing out ideas, talking about the matrix and pods or divisions as we call it, or just all the possibilities. So chime in.
Yeah, so there are 4 permanent opponents. So that it's the two, the Territorial Cup, the Kansas State, Kansas game, BYU, Utah, and TCU and Baylor.
Yep, that's the 4 that we had.
Yeah.
Did the conference ever discuss divisions? I don't know why college sports insists on calling them pods. For 100 years, we've had divisions in sports. We can call them divisions. But in the Big 12 subreddit that is discussing the scheduling matrix, they brought up the need for divisions. Was that ever discussed?
Yeah, so you have to go back to when this process was done. For us, was 2023. We had just expanded. There was a 14 playoff at the time. And so every conference that had abandoned divisions at that point would get their best 2 teams into their championship game to go to for the 14 playoff. That was the impetus of not having divisions. So we didn't really discuss it because we would have been the only one doing it.
Do you think divisions makes more sense now, or does it make more sense in let's just say a future with a 2014 playoff?
It does become a discussion point when you expand the field, yes, because I think there are, particularly if there's no championship game, right? So I think it's something that we've talked about, but it's all in context of how big the CFP is going to be.
Yeah. So the thing that I think makes it incredibly challenging from your position is...
Yeah, I think that's also needed to be stated here.
Yeah.
It's just not easy. It's super easy to second guess this.
Right.
It's not easy to actually do it.
But for fans that want all these rivalries to remain intact each and every year, to do that, it opens up the possibility, even more so, of not having the best teams in the conference playing each other. It's very difficult for both of those things to be true.
Right.
So how do you balance that?
Well, I think you have to look at it. That when I worked for a previous boss, he used to say, begin with the end in mind. Right? What is the end goal? And you start there. And if it's CFP access, if it's travel balance, and so you have to be rivalry games, more opponents, competitive balance. All of that is thrown into the discussion. I've shared this with you guys before. We've been doing this process. We started this process back in January again for the 2028 season. So we're still in the middle of identifying our priorities, if you will, and it's all of those things. It's competitive balance, geographic balance, CFP field, and the ability to create more geographic rivalries, if you will, or geographic games, if you will. So all of it's going to be part of the discussion, but I think the field of the CFP field really determines kind of our path.
Yeah. So the matrix is through 2027.
Yeah.
Next year will be the last year of it.
That's right.
So you guys are basically, this is like the brainstorming session for, hey, if this happens when it comes to the playoff, we do this for 2028 going forward.
And just to add the additional context, it's 4 years so that everybody plays each other.
Well, it's not that. Because of the size of the league, not everybody plays each other equally, but everybody does play each other home and away
within 4 years.
Within 4 years, some games appear 3 times,
but many only are a home and away series.
So what are some of the things that could be on the table for 2028?
Well, I think
he's thinking about 2026, James. Come on.
I'm in 2026 mode and 2027 mode. But I would. So if you look asking me to look forward, but what we've talked about is just the things I just mentioned. Like how do we balance it more competitively? The best playing the best every year. How do we do that? It's tough to predict that. So we've spent a lot of time looking at other third parties to how we could measure that success and a particular roster on an annual basis and build that into the formula. So we've done some of that already. That work. But where I'm sorry to interrupt you, but wherever we land is still we're still I would say probably at the 50-yard line right now.
What else is top of mind for you right now? Like you said, we're kind of on the goal line of the start of football season.
Yeah, so here, obviously, I mentioned earlier, all of our officials are here in town at officials clinic. We just started yesterday. I just left them again this morning. They're excited to get those guys are awesome, man. They live and breathe football. They love being around each other. I said to them last night, I said, look, thank you for your sacrifice, your family sacrifice, but you guys just love being together, and you could just see it. We've got a great group of officials that are eager to get started, and we will we'll get going here in a few weeks.
New officials?
A few, yeah. We lost a couple guys in the NFL.
Which is probably a good thing.
Yeah. There's always. I mean, look, anytime somebody gets promoted, if you will, or gets an opportunity to achieve their goals. And I told the guys last night, I said, look, my job is to support you in your professional officiating career, whether that's to work a national championship game via the Big 12 or it's to go to the NFL. I'm going to give you all the tools to be successful. It's a really, really hard job, but those guys love it and they work really, really hard.
It is a really hard job. It is such a subjective sport.
All right, my $1 billion idea.
Okay.
If you like it, we can run with it. If you don't, just throw it right back. Flex scheduling for the last week or two of the regular season. And I don't know the math behind it, if it's even possible, where teams don't know their opponent until the last 4 weeks who they're going to play that last Saturday. Not necessarily.
We talked about this with Scott at Big 12 Media Days. Don't you remember?
Yeah, well, I want to hear it again.
Got it. Okay, I'm sorry.
Is it possible?
Well, it's a math problem, right? So that's the first part. Right? Football scheduling or any scheduling is a math problem. So you have to be able to balance the math. And when you have when you play 9 conference games, it's an odd number, so you've got a more difficult math problem. and then you've got to balance the ability for institutions to plan and predict their revenue for the season and build a budget that they know that's somewhat predictable. So all of that to say, it's possible, and there's a league this year that's going to try it and do it, and we'll be watching that closely and see where it goes.
Awesome. Just want to identify some of the changes to some of the rules of college football this year. The targeting penalty has changed a little bit. Offensive pass interference has changed. What?
Yeah, it went from a 15 to a 10.
10.
Yeah.
Which is that the right move?
Yeah, I think it's because it's a pre-snap, not pre. It's more akin to.
And that's the NFL. It's 10 yards, right?
Defensive holding, yeah. So it's it was intended to be more consistent with defensive holding.
Got it. Anything else? So and then the targeting penalty now.
No carryover.
Yeah.
To the next game. Yeah.
Which
I mean,
like.
the thing that's gotten a lot of discussion is the changes to the punt play and the punt formation, and you have to have 2 adjacent linemen with ineligible numbers or they're declared ineligible. So that's gotten a lot of discussion amongst not only the special teams coordinators but some head coaches because of their ability to use that play that down as a ability to do more than just punt and be in a punt formation and do something else out of it. So we spent a lot of time on that last night. There's still continued discussion about how we're going to officiate.
What can you just explain that a little bit more? What's the new punt?
Yeah, I'm going to step out of my lane a little bit, so I'm going to give you the wording of the playing rule, which is that the two adjacent linemen from the center, so the guard and the tackle on either side of the center, are now ineligible for a pass, and so that's then.
So they would fake it by sneaking those guys out.
That's right. So previously the way so if you see a spread formation, it was very difficult for the officials and the defense to know who was eligible and who wasn't, because they're lined up so close to each other from on the line of scrimmage. So the guys that are supposed to be off the line of scrimmage, because they're so spread from each other, it's difficult to know if they're on or they're off. And by number, so the numbering exception, by number, in a regular scrimmage down, we know those guys are not eligible by number. So, but on a punt play, everyone that is eligible, and then you're only determined ineligible if you're covered up. So that's a lot of detail, probably more than you want. But so it's just ability for the officials to officiate the play, because there was a lot of plays around the country last year. There was one in the Texas Tech Oregon game that I think it was the first or second punt of Oregon, they came out in this funky formation, and I was standing on the sideline. I'm like, I don't know who's eligible and who's not. Sure enough, they faked it to a guy that I think the left guard or the right guard, and so it's just a difficult play. It's gotten a lot of controversy because of the wording of the rule, and the ability for teams to use that down as a way to kind of disguise certain things.
Yeah. So fake punts will look more traditional. It sounds like.
Yeah, I think we're going to find out.
Yeah,
right? I'm not sure exactly
how they use it.
Yeah, how they use it. Yeah.
Well, Scott, this was a nice surprise.
It's comfortable
Perfect.
in here. I'm pleasantly surprised.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. Absolutely.
We're good.
When we left it, we did not think we'd be coming back to such a nice building from a temperature standpoint.
Well, I'm looking forward to. We had our first design meeting yesterday for our new replay center in the Williams Tower. It does have a nice, beautiful, air-conditioned space for you all, so
we're excited.
We're making progress there and looking forward to a great season. And thanks for all you guys do, and thanks for being here and enduring the summer.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, bud.
Scott Draper is the Chief Competition Officer for the Big 12. Coming up next, Eric Sondheimer, the LA Times.
7. Middle run. That had the look of a 4-down play sequence. We'll see if they are going for 4 down below the 35 of Baylor. Baylor's defense has been able to do.
Levitt. Blitz coming. It could have been worse. Jackie Marshall finally will get credit for the sack.
Jackie Marshall, just watch him. Not truly rushing, right? Kind of just waiting to see what he does. He corrals him, grabs that right leg, and puts him to the ground.
Little play action. River eyes downfield. The dump at the last moment to Rodgers.
He sets himself a ball game. Even if he plays go on that 3rd down, really does a nice job.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios, along with James Wesley, Amari Tebkin. Fortune has released some really interesting information, basically saying that in 2025, Americans wagered roughly $166 billion on sports gambling.
Yeah, that's not good.
Which the combined revenue, $166 billion, exceeds the consumption of movies, music, books, and museums, which generated approximately $70 million. The surge in sports betting via Fortune could approach $300 billion when including unreported tribal casino handles and prediction market platforms as well. So 166 is actually probably a low number relative to what we're actually going through right now.
You know, this is, on the surface, not good.
Shocking.
Really scary. But it shouldn't be shocking because sports betting activates a part of the brain that going to a museum or an art show or the movies doesn't. It's very addictive.
Unless you could gamble on the movie you're watching.
Exactly. Over under 2.5 hours. With previews. Yeah, this is bad, but also
yeah, this ain't good.
I also think the accessibility is a big part of it. How many states have legalized sports betting where you can just pull up your phone, download an app, sign in with your Gmail account, and off you go?
39 states plus DC.
39 states?
30 of them offer online or mobile sports betting, excuse me. So only 30 of the 39.
Well, that'll be 39 because that's been the shift. A lot of states where
it starts off right.
Couldn't do it mobily, eventually get there. So, I mean, almost 70% of the country, at least 60% of the country, it's legal and easy to do. And you don't win money. Like, I think that's pretty evident. So yeah, this is bad. That's my hot take. This is not good.
Tells me a couple of things. Number one, I wonder if it was the right idea to legalize sports gambling. Was this a bad idea? Probably. Number two is Brendan Sorsby won't be the only one.
No, he won't.
Not even close.
And he wasn't the first. He was not the first. He won't be the last. He was just the biggest most high-profile athlete to get wrapped up in this. And we've seen it with guys in the NFL. We see it with guys in the NBA. We saw it with a whole slew of college basketball players and coaches that were part of an FBI investigation. It's going to be an ongoing thing. But where I think it was a mistake, absolutely, because now it is starting to, I think, impact the integrity of the game. And when I say game, that's a blanket statement. That's for the NBA. That's for the NFL. That's for college football, college sports, any sport, Major League Baseball, where there are high stakes financially. I believe it's impacting the integrity of the sport.
Yeah, and I think the reality here is, it's like, don't trust the man behind the curtain, right? Because that's, to your point, like, oh yeah, all of our sports are not compromised, everything's on the up and up, and it's like, you're telling me that there's that much money in this industry, so much more so than literally any other entertainment industry by far, and so you're telling me that like, there isn't these things happening at a large scale right now? I'm sure there is, and we just don't know about it. It's sad to think about. It's sad for all of the victims of this. I mean, there's no way in which we put the toothpaste back in the tube with this, but it certainly appears that for many of the reasons for why sports gambling was illegal in the first place, probably good for why they were. And yet, once sports got their hands on casino and sports betting for advertisers, all bets were off.
And there's a couple of things to add. So, number one, sure, there are still fans that are watching football because they like football or basketball or whatever the sport may be. But there's now a very large percentage of the population that's watching football to see if their parlay hits versus just cheering on their favorite team.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, just to kind of put into perspective how prevalent this is on college campuses. And I'm talking about non-athletes. Like, it's a bro code thing. You will be hard-pressed to find any young 18 to 21-year-old male walking around on a college campus that does not have a sports betting account. And that's another thing that I think is just bad about the whole thing. The whole idea is that age threshold just continues to get more and more younger. And, like, I've been down that road, and I feel very, very grateful that I stopped and that it didn't become a true, like, full-fledged addiction. Like, for me, I just got tired of it. Like, I was living in a state where mobile sports betting was legal. I bet on professional sports. I went down a rabbit hole where I thought I could beat the house, and I'm driving listening to NFL breakdown podcasts and listening to all these different platforms to try and get a strategic advantage. And finally I was like, man, this is just, it's a lot of work. Bet the house on the Super Bowl, lost, wiped out the account, and haven't touched it since. But a lot of stories don't end that way.
Yeah, sadly, you're right. I'm not sure what the fix is here. It's just really interesting to observe, like, just how far it's gone. I think it's obvious that it's become so ingrained in sports, but to the degree of 166 billion, more than twice as much as what we're seeing in, what were traditional outlets for, for entertainment. That's the thing that's like, wow, like, look at how far we've come in terms of entertainment and sports betting is one of the, most prevalent parts of our society.
I don't know if there's a fix, but I'm a big advocate for education.
Yeah. All right, Will Hammond will be on tomorrow's show. You're not going to want to miss it. Thanks, of course, to Anthony Smith, our producer with Big 12 Studios. Thanks to Damon Turner. T-Chains produces us on TuneIn. Thanks to James Westling. I'm Ari Temkin. Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, is back tomorrow, but for now we're out. Peace.